All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started, so that way we can make sure we get you guys out of here on time, if not early. That's the goal, is early, so we'll do our best. Be patient with me, as we have some people online, some people in person. When Andy comes back, we'll be able to tag team and he can monitor the chat while I'm talking and vice versa. But for now, I'm gonna have to kind of keep an eye. And those of you online, be patient with me as well. Don't hesitate to put things in the chat as they come to mind. Just be patient with me as I try to get to your questions or your comments along the way. Eventually we'll be able to get into a rhythm here in just a few minutes once I have my right hand with me to do the other part. So the access to the presentation is the QR code or the bit.ly link. Those of you in person, the Wi-Fi password is in the bottom right-hand corner. It does have interactive links throughout, so it is helpful to have it in front of you. If you don't have it in front of you, it's going to be okay. We'll still get through it, and then after we're done, we can always email you the presentation as well, so that way you'll have access to all the links. Or feel free to download it, make a copy of it, so that you have it readily whenever you need it. Obviously, you're going to get a lot of information at one time, so sometimes it helps to go back and get to it later. My name is Jamie Inskeep. Hello. I am the VP here at Tech Point Foundation for Youth. I was a classroom teacher for 16 years. I got to a point in my career where I was getting tired of teaching. And I know a lot of you can relate to that feeling of like, I really still, I love the kids. I still love what I'm doing, but I just don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life. And it was a critical point for me. And I wasn't done teaching, but I was tired and I was in the mundane of the day-to-day. And so I was looking for something that would bring the excitement and the passion back to what I was doing. And my son at the time was an elementary student, and he was attending a robotics camp over the summer at a different school. I didn't know anything. I just dropped him off and picked him up. You know, that was it. I listened to him talk about it, and that was about the extent of it. And then, hello. And then I saw an opportunity to apply for a grant for Tech Point Foundation for Youth to start a robotics team. And it was all about like, you don't have to have any experience. You don't need to know anything about robots, and we'll give you all the equipment. And for me, I was like, as a mom, I thought it'd be a great way to connect with my son. As a teacher, I was like, this might be exactly what I'm looking for. This might bring some excitement back to what I'm doing. And so I applied for the grant, received it, went through the training, got the equipment, still had no idea what I was doing. But decided I was going to go all in and just be vulnerable and learn with the kids along the way. And it sounds like very cliche, but it changed my life. It truly changed my life and changed the trajectory of what I was doing. I started applying the same concepts with after school robotics into my school day. So like I was teaching language arts, math, science, I was teaching social studies, and I was finding myself using the same concepts and the same strategies that I was doing with after school robotics. It completely blew up in my school. We had hundreds of kids that wanted to be on the robotics team, expanded to 5 teams, and then ended up moving into an innovation position at our intermediate school, where I had 10 robotics teams, helped every other school in my district start robotics teams. It truly became my identity. I absolutely fell in love with it. And it wasn't, I enjoyed the competition of it, but it was what I was seeing in my students. That was fueling me. The way that they were problem solving, using critical thinking skills, communicating effectively, communicating with adults better. Like their behavior was better. They were more motivated. All of that, it empowered me, and I could not get enough of it. So did that for several years until I saw a position open here and thought, robots all day, every day? Yes, please. And so I got to a position where I was shifted out of the classroom and now do this full time. So I was director of programs up until about 4 weeks ago when I became the vice president. So now let me introduce you to the rest of the team. We are a very small team. So the funny thing is, when I knew a lot about Tech Point Foundation for Youth, because I worked with the grant and everything, I when I applied for the position, I had no idea. I went to the website and I expected to see this huge staff because of so much that happens. And saw that it was a very, very small staff and was shocked to see that like this few amount of people accomplished so many things for the state of Indiana. And so our president and CEO said the joke's on me because now I'm part of that small team and have a lot of work to do. But George Giltner is our president and CEO, myself, Andy Fulton, who we met at the door, and those of you that are online will be chatting with here in a few minutes. And most of you have gotten an email from is our program manager. And then Autumn Martin is our communication and marketing manager. And then our newest hire, Danielle Doherty, is our community engagement manager. So you might hear from her occasionally. She runs our STEM mentor program, which I'll tell you more about at the very end. And some more opportunity to get get involved in another one of our programs that puts a STEM mentor in your classroom or in your robotics team with you. So that's our team. We are small but mighty. And our mission, best way to summarize it is we serve K through 12 in the state of Indiana. And we're on a mission to give equal access meaningful STEM opportunities to all K through 12 students, specifically underrepresented. So the data shows that we need more girls in STEM, we need more students of color in STEM, and we need more students from a low income background in STEM. And so that's our priority populations. We serve all students, but that's where we put our focus and that's where we put our priority. Ultimately, our goal is to get these kids connected to a STEM career. So we want to get them excited at a young age so that they hopefully want to then pursue a STEM career as their future. So we're in all 92 counties. Most people don't know that Indiana has more elementary and middle school robotics teams than anyone else in the country. And it's because of our state robotics initiative. So when we go to the World Championship in Dallas at the end of the year, we will have more representation from Indiana than any other country in the world. So that's because the State Robotics Initiative, we give equipment to people like you to start a robotics team. And it started back in 2016. You can see the difference in the map. So when our president and CEO, George Giltner, was in my position, former Mayor Greg Ballard was invited to a robotics competition. He didn't know the first thing about it, but he was completely in awe of what was happening, what he was seeing. And he was motivated to bring specific dollars to more schools to do that exact thing. So he started that in Indianapolis. When he left office, he passed that initiative on to us. And that's when we started the State Robotics Initiative that said, anybody who wants to start a robotics team, we're going to give you the equipment, we're going to give you the training, we're going to give you the support throughout the season. And by doing that, you can see we expanded throughout the entire state. So now we're in all 92 counties. Who has experience with robotics? Anybody? Any prior, a little bit, and online, make sure you chime in on the chat what your experience is. Has anybody been to a robotics competition? Okay. Yeah, definitely. So I don't usually say this, but for some reason I want to explain that there's VEX and then there's FIRST Robotics. So you may have heard of both. We choose to use the platform of VEX Robotics, but because it's a little bit cheaper and we think it's a little bit better as far as if there's more building components to it, more and the driving component at the younger age that the FIRST doesn't have. So that's what we choose to use as VEX, but you might hear about FIRST Robotics as well. It's like the first Lego League, so that's associated with Lego. So just wanted to decipher the difference between those two things. And has anybody heard of Tech One Foundation for Youth for any other reason? Awesome. Okay, great. I think I just submitted somebody else. Okay, so in today's training, we'll give a overview of robotics, why robotics matters. So like why this is a good thing for you to be in this seat today, why this is going to be such a good thing for you and your students. And then we're going to get into coaching. So we're going to talk about the ins and outs of what is robotics coaching, what is okay, what is not okay, best practices, things like that. Then we'll look at the equipment, which nobody has, right? So this is sometimes an issue with equipment because there's so many people that want it. Sometimes it gets back ordered. So hopefully, I think all the orders have been placed. It's just a matter of when they're available and when they get to you. From what I've been told, it should be sometime this month. So I fully anticipate you'll have all of your equipment before you're ready to start your robotics season. But we will definitely keep you updated and posted on that. So we have a couple of kits in person that we can look at. So it'll be more, usually we'd like to do a speed build, but we won't do that today. And hopefully that'll give us some of our day back, some time back. But we will kind of show you the equipment so you can at least get your eyes on it and kind of see what to expect.
And that's one of the IQs. So for the VRC people online, we'll virtually show you what equipment.
Yes. And then we'll get into the competition. So we'll look at what to expect at a robotics competition. We will go through the challenge this year. So every year the challenge changes. So we'll look at the actual game and the scoring of that game to give you a better understanding of that. And then we'll wrap up with some resources and ways we can support you throughout the season. And then and about halfway through, we will take a break. But if you're in person, you're an adult, so you're welcome to use the restroom whenever you need to, or if you need to stand up and move around, feel free to do that. Very casual, whatever you need. That's what we want you to be comfortable. But when we get halfway through, we will split, and then Andy will take any VRC coaches, so high school, and then elementary and middle school will stay with me. Or if you're middle school VRC, we do have a few of those too. So this is our first year we're offering the split. If you want middle school, you can choose IQ or VRC. But we'll get into all that, so. And we'll split so that he can go over the game for high school and then I can go over the game for IQ. Any questions so far? What to expect? Okay. As a grant recipient, now, not everybody's a grant recipient. Some of you, already had equipment or you're taking over for another coach that maybe left your building. So this doesn't apply to everybody. This is only if you filled out a grant application and received a grant from us for all of your equipment. So if you have any question about that, whether or not who you are, don't hesitate to ask us. But if you are just attending the training because you just needed the training, not the equipment, you can disregard all of this. But if you are a grant recipient, these are your grant requirements by receiving the grant. This Zoom bar is going to be in my way. Gonna
Hit the street. Go scroll down and hit the dash. Should make it.
Oh, nice, thank you. So you need to be an educator, okay, somewhere between kindergarten and 12th grade, or you have access to those students. We also have a nonprofit grant, so we have schools and nonprofits that can apply. You don't already have a VEX robotics team, or it's been stagnant for enough years that it needs to be reviewed. And since COVID, we've had to it used to be hardcore about like, never had a VEX robotics team. Now we're a lot more lenient because since COVID, so much equipment has sat and teams have gone dormant. So we're also reviving teams as well. So that's kind of a loose requirement. You agree to attend a 2 to 3 hour professional development, check, you're here, so that's done. And then you have the ability to assemble a robotics team of at least 3 students. So you need at least 3 students to have a team. It used to be 2, but now with IQ, you have to have 3 team members. So we'll get into that later. But you have to have at least 3 students to have a team. And then you will coordinate team attendance to at least 1 VEX robotics competition. So we really want to set you up to, as scary as it may be, you have to rip the Band-Aid off and just go compete. And you might get killed, but you're going to learn so much while you're there. We'll get into all of that too, but it's so important. If you don't attend that one competition, then it's kind of, I don't want to say it's all for nothing because it's not at all. It's not all about competing, but it's so important to have that learning experience and take your kids to a competition. We used to require 2, but we've got more lenient with everything since everything shifted with COVID. So we're only going to ask you to go to 1. 2 would be ideal because the first one you learn so much that you then apply to the second competition. And then you agree to actively encourage schools within your district to apply for a robotics start. And remember that slide before where I showed you like the progress that we've made. We're in 51% of schools. We want to be at 100% of schools. We want every single school to have the opportunity to experience robotics. And so the way we do that is all of you by helping us spread the word and tell everybody else in your district, you need to get this grant. It doesn't cost you anything. You get everything for free. They're going to help you throughout the season. So you agree to help us do that. And then you just include our logo on any of your, like, if you have a team t-shirt, a banner, anything that you include, like any kind of sponsor logo on, we just ask that you include Tech Point Foundation. And then at the end, I have a link to where you can find that logo. So that's available. And then we ask that you keep the team for at least 2 years. Just like a competition, you need time to grow and establish. So we ask that you keep, that you continue it for 2 years. We know that things change. Teachers move on to other schools or leave the classroom altogether. If that's the case, all we ask is that you help that transition. So you either pass it on working through your administrator or another person in the building to pass it on to somebody else. If it's not possible, we just ask that you communicate with us because we don't want equipment to collect dust. We want it to be in the hands of kids. So if you anticipate that that's going to happen, no big deal, no shame, no judgment, just contact us and we'll get it back and we'll get it to somebody else. So we just want to make sure the equipment's being used. And then we have pre and post surveys that are important for us in order to secure funding. So we are a nonprofit, so 100% of our money is donated. And then that money that's donated, we turn around and we give it to you all to start robotics teams. And so the way we do that is by writing a lot of grants. And a lot of those grants ask us data, like how many students are you impacting and how are they feeling about robotics, things like that. And the only way we can do that is through surveys that you guys complete for us. So it's a teacher survey as well as student survey. So we just need a pre and a post for the students that participate in your program. We'll send you reminders for those surveys. At the end of the presentation, there'll be links for those surveys. We know that your time is valuable, and we also know how valuable this information is for us. So we're going to give you a $50 Amazon gift card for completing those, just as a thank you for helping us. So once your teacher and your pre-student surveys are turned in, you're gonna get that $50 Amazon gift card, and then we're gonna give it to you again at the end of the school year. So $100 just to help us with that data collection. And that Amazon gift card is for you to do whatever you want with it. Like you don't have to buy things for your classroom for your kids. You can buy whatever you want. And we say that, but you know, teachers still tend to buy things for their classroom. Which is understandable. Another thing we need you to do is follow us on social media. So if you can do it right now, you can get your phones out. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, we're at Tech Point Youth. We put in really important information out there. We host the state championship for robotics. It's the largest state championship in the country. We put updates on there about things like that. About other grant opportunities, about professional development opportunities, just lots of things that you want to stay in the know about. So follow us on both of those pages. But more importantly, we want you to join the Coaches Corner groups on Facebook. Those are so valuable. There are hundreds and hundreds of coaches on there. We're very selective. It can only be Indiana coaches. And there's tons of great conversation. You're going to find out very quickly the robotics community is one of the most inviting, most supportive communities you've ever been a part of. Coaches are constantly helping each other out, tips and tricks. Any questions you have, you can ask in that group and you're going to get answers quickly. You can also search the content of that group for years worth of information. So if you have a question about storage or how to recruit your robotics team members, things like that, you can search any of those things and you can find in other conversations throughout the last several years. So the Coaches Corner IQ is going to be your, those of you that are coaching elementary or middle school IQ, and then the Coaches Corner VRC is going to be types of coaches. So there's two different ones so that we can make sure the content stays relevant to that age level. And then second assignment is to make sure that you're getting our emails. So most emails are going to come from Andy or myself. So that would be number one, is make sure that your filter is not blocking either of us. But we also have what we call robot grant at techpointyouth.org. It's a more generalized inbox. We send like bigger announcements and like things that are more like for bigger groups through that email. I've already talked to some that have a really strong filter at their school. So if you can send these contact emails to your IT department to say, I need these to not be blocked because I need to be able to see these emails, that would be very helpful. So Andy at techpointyouth.org, Jamie at techpointyouth.org, and then Robot Grant. Robot Grant is the one that is the biggest, because it doesn't have it, like, it's more generalized, and I think some filters just don't like it very much. I don't know why that sounds scary, but that's probably the robot part. All right, Andy. Swap.
All right. So before I jump into this, you'll probably hear a lot about VEX, REC. You're like, I'm getting VEX equipment. I had to register on REC. I'm getting training from TechPoint Foundation. So we're gonna try put it all under one umbrella so you kind of know the roles of each of these. I also want to say we don't get any money or kickbacks from VEX, or I don't know if Jamie already said this, or from REC. So if at any point it sounds like we're trying to sell you on it, it's just because we really like the equipment. Like, we don't get anything from VEX. So we just like to make that. We give them money, but we just really like the equipment. Again, as Jamie said, there's also First that you'll hear about. We just like VEX a little bit better. All right, so I'm a sports nerd, so I'm gonna break this down into an easy way that I think about it, using like an NFL analogy. So you have VEX. VEX is gonna be like Wilson. Wilson's basketball. Who makes the footballs? I know. Is it still Wilson? Well, maybe we'll switch to basketball. VEX is gonna be the Wilson. So they're in charge of all of these parts that you're gonna get, somewhat of the curriculum. Anytime you have issues with wanting to order more equipment, their sales reps, all that stuff. We'll probably dive a little bit into their website when we split up into groups. But VEX is gonna be like the Wilson. They make the equipment, they make the robot parts, brains, batteries, all the stuff that you all are getting. REC is kind of like the NBA. They're in charge of the robot game. They're in charge of the competitions, team registrations. If you have issues when it comes to like local competitions, they're going to be your place to go. You got VEX, they make the balls. You've got REC, they're the NBA. And then you have TechPoint Foundation for Youth, which is going to be like the Players Association. So we're here to support you, to help give you money in the form of this equipment, ongoing support, this training that you're receiving. So as you start to, when we dive further into this PowerPoint, you're going to hear VEX, us, REC. That's kind of the breakdown of what each one does. So what is VEX? The parts, the balls. Yes, they're the equipment. REC? NBA. So they're kind of in charge of managing the robot game, local competitions. When you do start registering for local competitions, those are going to be like your Pacers, your Lakers, your Bulls. They're going to be like when you go to these schools to compete, those are going to be like your in-house organizations that act as teams. And then the foundation, it's like the Players Association. So we're here for your support, give you training. Jamie and I love answering questions, especially from new coaches, because we want you all to be successful. So you had our emails. Don't be afraid to reach out for anything, because we're here 100% for you, for your support, whether you prefer email, phone calls, Zoom calls, just let us know. We want to talk to you. All right. So in the VEX world, you have a plethora of different programs that you can participate in. So a few years, when I first started, so I started 5 years ago, we were pretty much just in the VEX IQ and the VEX V5 space. So that's your after school robotics. The IQ are these kits. The V5, for those of you online, are those metal kits, a little bit more intense. We'll talk about the breakdown here in a second. But we semi-recently decided we want to create a pipeline of students from K through 12, both in school and after school. And luckily, VEX also shared that same vision and has created, 6 different opportunities for schools to participate in robotics. So you have VEX 1, 2, 3. That's going to be more kindergarten and first grade, super basic coding, teaching the students that if I tell something to go forward, it's just going to go forward. If I turn it to turn right, it's going to turn right. Little pucks, they look like kind of like these little microphones that are on the table, about this big. Not much building, but learning the concepts of computer engineering at an early age. When did everybody here start learning about what computer science is? Not in kindergarten, I'm guessing. I think my first computer science class was like typing, learning how to Google things. You have VEX Go. So VEX Go is like 3rd to 5th grade. It is introduction to engineering as well as block-based coding. So it's similar pieces to these in the kits. They're just a little bit smaller. The robots aren't as kind of chunky as these. A lot more. You'll come to realize that with IQ and VRC, you have a lot more freedom in your builds, whereas VEX Go is a lot more follow these instructions, and then we'll talk about why this build is the most efficient and why this code, the way you do this coding is most efficient.
I will also say, we still have grants available for that too, so if you teach grades like 2nd through 5th, and you're looking for something to add to your school day, whether you're a general education teacher or a STEM teacher or anything, teachers are absolutely loving VEX Go. It has been huge. So we do still have grants available on exactly where you apply for the grant for this. For starting a new robotics team is also the VEX Go grant. So don't hesitate to apply for that as well.
Yeah, that's a good question. So VEX Go is not really competition based at this point. There's a competition aspect, but it's not really like what this is. This is more so on like a national, global level, whereas VEX Go is really more district.
It's like a friendly competition.
Yeah.
That you do it formally in your own classroom or in.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you wanted to do VEX Go after school, it would it wouldn't necessarily work. If you want to do like a STEM club, but it's really more so in classroom. Because what's nice about it is it touches on all the aspects of STEM. So like using robotics to teach science. So you'll get the kids to build through the life cycle of a frog using these VEX pieces. So it's more so supplemental to what you're already doing versus
Standalone.
yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, we still have grants available. You'll have trainings. Yes.
Is that the one where they have the ball and then shoot it?
Yes,
I thought that was for
It is.
it will be. Yes.
but it says, oh, grade 6. Oh, so
6+.
Grade 6 is middle school.
So elementary kids can do it. We've seen at state, we give out trophies that are taller than the kids. So we have younger, this is what VEX, their suggestion is, yes. But we have 2nd graders that do this all the way up until 8th grade. There's a maximum age for what you can compete for IQ, but there's not a minimum. Sorry, I know that's a little confusing. So you have VEX IQ, which is what we're doing here today. That's after school, but there's also in-classroom curriculum. If you are a so it'd be more geared towards middle school teacher that does has any kind of engineering class or anything like that. I know that Indiana standards are changing more towards STEM focus somewhat with computer science and all that. So if you have a middle school next year, we'll offer up some more grants for in-classroom robotics. We went through all of our grants this year. So we'll let you know how that goes. Hopefully it goes great. And then you have, all of those first 3 are all using these plastic pieces. When you get into the EXP and V5, those are going to be metal robots, a lot faster, more so principles of engineering, shifting away from block-based coding that you'll see what we'll do today and more into Python. So type coding. I'm sure that's definitely the technical text base. There it is. And again, we'll split after our break where we'll talk about those V5 people will come with me. We'll talk more about what those metal robots are like, and everybody else will stay here and talk about the plastic ones. All right. I know that was very long-winded. Any questions about VEX equipment, parts, programs? We do have grants available for all of those. If you are interested, you can also ask Jamie and I after we're done any questions you have. All right, so shifting to REC, which is, in my NBA analogy, that's us. Kinda. This is like this would be the NBA. Yeah, it'd be the NBA. So you probably, once you've set up your teams, are gonna start hearing from Emily Running. She's gonna be your team engagement manager at REC, Robots Education and Competition Foundation. She is there just like us to support you, answer all of your questions. So there were a couple people that emailed me and said they couldn't set up their team because they weren't over the age of 13. You can email me for questions like that, or Emily. I think I just redirected all of you to Emily. She's great. Her LinkedIn's right there. She would love to connect with you. She's been at REC, I don't know, 5 years, 4 years, something like that. And she is in charge of pretty much all of Indiana. I think most of the REC support staff across the US have multiple states, but because Indiana's so big, her sole focus is Indiana. So she's here to help you register your team, register for an event. If you want to be an event partner, she'll talk about what that means. So I know we're throwing a lot of contacts out at you, but really it's just to show you that you have hundreds of people at your disposal to ask questions and get those questions answered.
And I would add, if you were a grant recipient, you may have already been in contact with Diana Bolts. If that might sound familiar to you, you might have gotten an email from her. She is directly working with us on the grant. So REC helps us by giving us a discount on equipment. And then she's kind of helping us manage the new grant recipients as far as team registration. And this year, for the very first time, they are requiring the background check before you can register a team. So this is the first year they've ever done this. So she's been working very closely with us to help all of you navigate all of that kind of those prerequisites to make sure you can get your teams registered. So just keep that in mind that you might get an email from Diana asking you questions or directing you on what to do, but you cannot get your equipment or register your teams until you complete that background check through REC Foundation.
If you haven't done so, you've probably already gotten emails from me. If you haven't done so and you haven't gotten an email from me, you probably have to unlock our emails from your IT. All right. More VEX stuff. So then this is the basketball. This is Wilson. So I already touched on it a little bit. You've got your differences between VEX IQ and VEX VRC. VEX IQ is more cooperation. You're paired, and we'll talk about this in a bit. Cooperation. You're paired with a partner to score the max points on a field. So I think a lot of people that hear robotics, they think of battle bots, which would be so cool, but you can't have third graders playing with fire. So this is like cooperation. They're competing in this game together. It's about $700 to get a VEX IQ team up and running, grade levels again. First through eighth. Eighth grade is the max. You can't have high schoolers dominating second graders in these games. So they kind of cap it. And then they even split it up further, where at competitions, you'll have elementary competing together, middle school competing together. The materials are plastic. The coding is block-based. The instructions are a lot simpler. Again, we'll talk about how you can build your first robot based on the instructions that are on the VEX website. But from there, we want you to improve a robot and kind of build what you want. But again, plastic pieces. Then you have VRC, which is middle school, high school, and college. Not so much middle school. There's not a ton. I would say there's under 100 VRC middle school teams in Indiana. So it's kind of the same programs competing against each other. More so the high school and college. Purdue actually has one. They won the world championship this past year. So it's highly competitive. Robots are way faster. Metal pieces, a lot more expensive, as you can see. And that's just for the kit itself. That doesn't include like power tools that you'll need if you're cutting metal. Can't use scissors. You'll need I don't know, you need an air compressor. You'll need, I don't know, a lot more stuff, a lot more power tools, bigger space because the field's larger. These grade levels are 6 through 12, again, more so in the high school space. Metal materials. Yeah, I think that's the difference between IQ and VRC. Any questions? Yeah.
To get great at the VEX IQ, But I also, I'm in a grade school, middle school, after I get that under my belt, and know more what I'm doing. But I add a VRC to help feed that pipeline going into my high schools.
Yeah.
that root into knowledge.
Of course, yes, and that in an ideal situation would be the way you do it. You would have like a IQ elementary and IQ middle, a VRC middle, and then feed into the high school. I will say that, so I don't have like a science background. Jamie mentioned she was a teacher. The IQ stuff is really easy to grasp. It is like block-based. Again, it's instructions. Put this piece in here and it does this. When you get to the VRC space, unless you know Python, unless you know things like torque and different forms of engineering to build the best robot, like it is highly competitive. So it definitely takes a little bit more knowledge, but if you do find that IQ is too easy for your students, you can definitely shift into the VRC space. Yeah, and of course, well, and the nice thing, and you'll probably hear Jamie and I talk about this, the nice thing about robotics is since it's very student focused and we don't want coaches messing with the robots, the student has a question you don't know the answer to, you just say, hey, it's a great thing for you to try and figure out. I'll give you the tools you need, but that's something for you to figure out. Any other questions?
But it's a great mindset, because you want, just like a football program or a baseball program, you want to fill that pipeline and you want that feeder program. So when you if you want to increase your high school, football team, you want them to be better, stronger, what do? You start having a league, right, of elementary students, so you can fill that pipeline. It's the same concept with robotics, absolutely.
And you can always check in with the high school too.
Yeah.
What high school is your? Chittard?
Yep.
Are you the St. Lawrence school? I went to St. Lawrence and Chittard. So yeah, they have a good robotics program. If you talk to Coach Pratt, I think is his name, and say, hey, I'm interested in starting a VRC team, I guarantee he'll give you tips, tricks. I'm sure he has extra, not full kits, but like extra equipment, ways to be successful, because he's going to want those good students right competing to his team.
Yeah.
Can you go back one slide? So I did a grant for elementary,
Yes.
and they're wanting me to then start middle school. So like I did 2 grants for middle school, like one for the IQ and one for the VRC.
Yeah, or if you wanted an IQ middle school and an IQ elementary, so you can have both. There's way more IQ middle school in Indiana than there is. I bet there's over 1,000.
Yeah, this is actually our very first year offering a middle school VRC grant, and we did a poll of coaches across the state, and then talked to some of our core people that we work with to say, is this something that because other states, middle school VRC is exploding. In Indiana, we just tend to gear towards middle school IQ. But we're not opposed to middle school VRC. What we don't want is a middle school IQ coach to stop coaching that team and start coaching middle school VRC. So there has to be a balance. We can't lose IQ middle school teams and gain, we can add middle school VRC. But it's also, that'd be a lot on a coach to do both IQ and VRC. So we also want to be protective of our coaches and not push you too far. So some situations where it's a good fit would be like, if you had, like, let's say you have elementary IQ and you have maybe some middle school students in that building that do IQ. And then a lot of high school robotics coaches will add a middle school team. So like 8th graders might come to the high school. They register in their middle school VRC, but like they're doing practices with the high school students. They're learning, they're getting all that information, but it's almost like a JV VRC. So it fits a little bit better in that capacity rather than in a middle school having both IQ and VRC. Hopefully that clears.
Yeah, you see coaches more often do like an elementary IQ, middle school IQ, and then high schoolers, high school VRC and the VRC. Good question though. Any other questions? So here are just a little more differences. The games are obviously different for IQ and VRC. This is kind of the equipment that's included. The VRC field is a lot bigger. Kits are a lot more intense, whereas the IQ equipment fits nicely in these little boxes. Again, we'll dive into each of these when we split up as a group, but just showing you the differences. The game also changes every year if you weren't aware. So with that said, that means that you'll need to find funding for new game elements every year. So you won't need to buy a new kit. You won't need to buy a new field, but you'll need to buy new elements. And typically it's $150, $200, right? For IQ. Well, I don't know what VRC is.
more like 4 to 5.
Yeah. So if your school is unable to help you raise funds for that, let us know and we'll come up with some ways that we've seen have been successful at other schools at getting funding. Or you can have us talk to your principals and we'll tell them why it's important that you get the money. All right. Any questions? I know I threw a lot at you. You got VEX, it's the Wilson. You got REC, thank you. REC is the NBA. You've got us, which is Players Association. And all 3 of those are here to help.
Yes. And I will just add the IQ field is 6 feet by 8 feet. So 6 by 8, it breaks down into tiles. So thinking about storage space and things like that. Once the game elements are installed, you really ideally don't want to have to move it. Although I was in the position where I had to move mine every single robotics practice. And so it's sometimes you have to, there's nowhere to practice after school. So you might have to get creative and breaking it into 2 pieces or 4 pieces based on where the game elements are located. I used to have to reassemble portions of it, but like this year's challenge for IQ, you can do an easy split down the middle. So you could basically not break, but separate it down the middle and store it in 2 pieces if you needed to. The field used to be 4 by 8. So if you are someone who is reviving a program at your school, you might have some of this equipment already in your building somewhere. And it's likely a 4 by 8 field. And VEX does sell an upgrade kit where you don't have to buy a whole new field. You can just buy the tiles that you need to make the 6 by 8 field.
The tiles are snapped together too, so they're super easy, relatively.
I was gonna say easy.
Relatively easy to.
They are
get
easy,
together
they're
apart.
just annoying.
I will say for VRC, you really need a space.
Yeah, you're not gonna wanna move that field. It's 12 by 12. Once you have it assembled, you're definitely not gonna wanna move that. So that's definitely gonna require a space that doesn't move. Like a platform.
Yeah.
Yep, a lot of people do that. A lot of the students prefer it that way. I would
We'll
say
do that at
more
state.
so on, at state, we will have it elevated. Definitely on IQ, VRC. So it just sometimes it depends on the challenge. Like last year's was like a game load where they wanted it at a certain level so that they could easily match load. So I'm not sure yet about this one, what the preference is gonna be, but regardless, we'll elevate them at state.
I don't have a team yet, because I don't know there's any.
Oh, yeah,
I should ask for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
How many people do I have in the team?
Yeah, so I would say, and we'll get into more details when we separate, but just for overview of each of them, I would say IQ has to be at least 3. And I would say 3 to 6 is probably a good number. So yeah, because especially like in elementary, the more kids you have, the harder it is for them to share and take turns, and you want them to learn how to do those things. But the more you have, the more challenging that can be. I also know that it's hard to narrow it down when you have a lot of kids showing interest. So we'll get into all of that as well on some tips and tricks on how you can do that. But I would some team, I've seen some elementary, middle school coaches go up to 10 to 12. I personally would never want to do that. But my personal experience is coaching, I had 4 per team. That for me was like that worked the best, at least with 5th and 6th graders. That's what I liked the best. But you can get creative with roles to keep them all busy. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So if you want to try to incorporate more kids, and then you can assign them roles to kind of have more controlled chaos with that many kids. So that's per team. And the VRC level, again, minimum of 3, but I would say we usually tend to see bigger numbers at the high school level because they do better together. They don't fight. That's not true. I'm sure they do fight, but they're not fighting over taking turns, things like that. They're more mature. They will have more substantial roles. Like for example, like marketing could be a person, all they do is try to get sponsorship and promote the team, manage social media. So they're going to have a lot more roles that they can establish. So you're gonna see higher numbers, probably 8 to 10 in the high school level, but we've seen anywhere from 3 to 12 probably.
Okay, so we've been talking with other middle schools, and they have like 80 to 100, which is kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Very probable for our school also. So how does that work? Like, would you guys basically split them, and would you be coaching like 8 teams and then just register all of those teams, or would you want to have?
If you're not gonna cut, then yeah, you have to decide what is meaningful in your opinion, like as far as how many kids per team. And you have to split them up for, and then you'd have to register 8 separate teams. So the teams are like, 1, 2, 3, 4A, 1, 2, 3, 4B, 1, 2, 3, 4C, so every additional letter is an additional team.
Your range, how many kids, let's say they're all kids a month. How many would you say?
What grade level? All beginners, I would not go over 6. That's my personal opinion.
What if they are not experts, but they have experience?
Or I think, yeah,
If you think about like at a competition, so like it sounds nice, you can have 10 kids building a robot, right? But when you're at a competition, these games are a minute. And you probably only get 6 runs during a competition. So if you've got 15 kids on a team and you need to figure out who's gonna be your drivers for 6, I mean, you'll find that you'll have kids that are like good drivers, not great drivers. And it's just, it sounds easy to get 15 kids to build a robot, but when you start getting into the logistics of the competition, it doesn't make sense to have huge groups of students going to these schools and competing.
because you're gonna end up with a group of them that are playing around doing absolutely nothing.
Right.
Yeah. And then you're just gonna be herding cats the whole day. It's gonna be, yeah. Each team needs their own robot, yes. So the startup grant is 1 robot. So if you want to add additional teams, then you'll have to talk to your administrator about, okay, we need more. And this is typical case. The principal comes to you and says, I don't want to cut anybody. I want everyone to do it. Well, then show me the money, like, I got us 1, you're gonna have to get us the rest of them, that's just the reality of it. And in some cases, they'll jump on and be like, let's do that, principals get competitive. I know my principal was like, whatever you need to go out there and beat them all, we're not about, that's not what we're about, we're not about winning, but like, you can use that, if that helps to get your principal to put the money out, then whatever it takes. Hopefully that helps a little bit. We'll get much more into the details of it. So I know there's probably all kinds of things formulating in your mind, like you're thinking about all kinds of things. So jot those things down and we'll get into more logistically, like team roles, recruiting. If you need to narrow it down, some tips on how you can do that. I mean, remember, I had over 100 kids that were wanting, I had to meet with parents, kids crying, like I had to go through all of that. So I'm gonna give you all my tips and tricks on that. But I want to stop for just a moment and I talked in the beginning about how robotics changed my trajectory and how it changed things, not just for my students, but for me as the educator. So I'm just kind of curious, both online and in person, like why are you here? Are you here because your principal made you? Are you here, like, why did you choose this? Why are you here today? Just curious. Anybody want to share? Yeah.
I'm here because I come from a socioeconomically disadvantaged school population. And a lot of them are English as a next language learners. And I have a child, and then I started in November, I come from hospitals. And I started in education, and I have a child come in November with a friend to tell me via her translator that she wanted to go. And I went, what? I don't have Facebook. So I looked into it.
Here you are.
And here we are. So, like, we're about to have this.
Yeah, well, good for you. That's a scary place to be, but good for you for taking the lead.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll learn some Spanish, we'll learn some robots.
Yes,
We'll build character.
absolutely, absolutely.
And it'll be good.
What about you?
So my partner here is a goalie.
Oh, no.
So the reason I said yes was yes. I had this one kid who could only be described as probably like the silliest child I've ever met in my life until I met my son. And he was, I mean, it was rough, like, we all had that kid, it was like. And so when robotics started at my school before this, he joined, and it was like day and night, and he started coming in, and instead of like, this is then just like being crazy swirly, he's like, so he's working with a robot, and this and that, and like, I gotta be good because I can't get in trouble because I'm off team, and like, he became one of the leaders of like, an 80 kid team, and like, everyone was looking up to him, and he just like dove into it, and like, completely turned around, like, how teachers viewed him, and like, his behavioral issues and stuff, like, and it was just really cool to see, like, we literally saw what happens when a kid, like, finds their niche.
Yeah. That's awesome. I have several stories like that. Definitely. Anybody else want to share why you're here? Anybody online?
I was voluntold.
Volunteer, it happens. It happens. I'm sorry for you that that's what happened,
I know.
but I'm happy you're here.
I'm the only science teacher at our school. So, and we're paid tiny private school.
Wow. We're about to shake up that tiny little school.
It's not partition.
Yeah.
So we are an after-school program that caters to the Black community. So I'm the program director and trainer, so I kind of raise my hand to create the robotics team for a lot of girls.
Yeah.
No one knows, this is just yet, we're gonna have.
There you go.
We will, I don't want more things to do, so
Yep.
we know that this can come in, like, they'll really find something to put into,
Absolutely. That's awesome. So you're gonna fall in hell, those.
They're gonna do it.
Yep. They will absolutely love it. Yep.
So I guess I'm the only non-educated.
So educated,
Absolutely.
I'm not, and you qualify for the grant, so I can tag to represent Sugar Bros, and I'm starting a robotics program, but it's so we're doing this, and I mean, I played it pretty full, so we're also doing the first team, so that we don't have to cut as many.
Yeah.
And have these 5 to 5. So I'm just here for my daughter wanted to learn more about robotics after we came and spoke at the.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's right, the Girl Scout group.
And you and your daughter came.
Yep.
At our Girl Scout school.
Yeah.
She wanted, on boxing,
Yeah.
my surprise, and seeing that.
Perfect. Yeah, I've been to 2 Girl Scout groups now. Helping earn the robot badge.
Yep. We're pretty much started again, because we just moved from, when you met them, they were babies.
Okay,
They went to Brown, and then I was pretty go with junior.
okay, that's awesome. That's exciting. Okay, what I would say, I'll just add is, what we believe and what I believe from my experience is robotics is one of the most rewarding things and most rewarding and beneficial things you can provide for your students. They're gonna learn that all the standards, all the skills, they're gonna develop all those things. But robotics is one of the most rewarding things and that will apply to whatever they choose to do with their lives, STEM or not. They're gonna develop skills and through the process of working with other students, of problem solving, critical thinking. And those skills they're gonna be able to take with them. They're gonna develop, we believe, to be better versions of themselves. And they're gonna be able to take those things anywhere they go, whatever they decide to do. And that's why we choose. And with our mission, we could choose any platform, any STEM curriculum, any STEM product. But we choose robotics because we believe it truly instills in students the things that will go with them for the rest of their lives. And what, this is just an image of what I was talking about, like, they're gonna get all the hands-on, they're gonna get the very, all the hardware, the mechanical, the technical, the building, the program, and they're gonna get better at all of those things. But ultimately, what really matters is what is gonna come out of that. And those are those soft skills that are not as concrete and easy to teach, and only through experiences and opportunity and problems are they gonna establish those four C's that we've heard about in STEM. I used to share this with my students. This came from the New York Times. It's how to get a job at Google. Every single one of your kids, they know Google, right? Like they live on Google. If they want to know anything, they go to Google. And New York Times published this and it shook me. And I would always share it with my classroom, with my robotics students, because I wanted them to understand that you don't have to have a perfect score on your SAT. You don't have to have a high GPA. You don't have to have, excuse me, the perfect grades. A company like Google who has enough, they're big enough where they can be selective. They can be picky about who they choose, and they're not looking for the graduates from this, Stanford, Yale, Harvard. They're looking for people who can process things on the fly, who can solve problems, who can be a leader. That's what they're looking for. And I think it helps students exhale a little bit and relieve some of that pressure. Like I just want to focus on being the best version of myself. And I don't have to get so fixated on a high GPA or scores. More and more colleges are throwing out SAT scores and they're not even relevant as much anymore. So I think it's important for kids to get this message and to understand. We also have an Explore program where we take juniors and seniors in high school and expose them to different STEM opportunities in Indianapolis. So they go to 4 different sites. And Andy and I go to all 4 of those sites with these kids. And we listen to the STEM professionals there that some of them did go to these fancy universities. They went to Rose-Hulman. They went, and the students are asking them, like, what are you looking for when you're hiring people for this company? They're not, all of them, all 4 of those companies. We're talking Roche. We're talking SEP, like big name companies, and they're all telling our kids these things. They're not worried about anything else. Like if they can do these things, then they want them on their staff. And so I think it's really powerful for kids to hear these things and be reminded that it's not all about the performance. We already talked a little bit about this, so I'll skip on from here. But when we think about engineers, I think most students and probably a lot of us we might have mental images of engineers, of people like these that we see in movies, that we see in cartoons. We think about people that are crazy, right? That they're doing weird things. They're spending mindless, endless hours typing in code on a computer, like they don't have any friends. They're very set apart and by themselves. Nobody understands them, things like that. So this is where I think a lot of the mindset of where our kids are right now. But ultimately what we need to help them understand is that engineers, they're just problem solvers. Bottom line, they're just problem solvers. And a lot of these kids, they're idolizing things like YouTube, TikTok, influencers. They want to be like the basketball stars, the football stars, the artists, like that's who they're idolizing. And they're not thinking about the fact that there are engineers that are solving huge problems, and that they are capable of that as well. So we want to elevate robotics to a level that is attractive, that excites them, where they're thinking more out of the box about what engineers do, and they want to be problem solvers. This is why at the State Robotics Championship, we hosted at places like Lucas Oil Stadium, because we want it to be somewhere where the band state championship is taking place and the football state championship is taking place. And that's why the trophies are as tall as them, because we want them to understand that robotics is just as, if not more important than sports and any other extracurricular activity. So now the types of students that robotics attracts, this is like kids that love school are going to love robotics, but the kids that hate school are also going to love robotics. So the ones that don't want to be at school, they're going to now want to be at school because they don't want to miss robotics practice after school. It's going to attract your students that have straight A's, those high achievers that like have to have straight A's. They're going to want to do something like robotics, but it's also going to attract those straight F students that they don't care about the worksheets. They don't care about the projects. They don't care about the work. It's also going to attract those kids. It's going to attract the ones that are struggling socially. They don't know their place, they don't know where they belong, they don't have a lot of friends. They're going to find their place on a robotics team. But then also the ones that are too social are going to love it too, because they're gonna be talking like crazy at practice, they're gonna make new friends. They're gonna go to these competitions where they're gonna meet people from other schools, and they're gonna be all about that. So you're gonna get both ends of the spectrum, for social, and then also the ones that hate sports. They don't want anything to do with sports, but they want to be competitive. They're gonna love robotics because it doesn't require them to be physically active, but they can still be competitive. And then also the ones that love sports because they can be competitive. So used to have students that were really into sports, but also loved robotics. And I had students that did not want to do sports, but loved robotics. So it really, bottom line, it reaches all students, all types of kids. A couple of my personal stories from coaching. Here on the left, the young man in the black hoodie and the hat, he had behavior issues, like in a major way. And his homeroom teacher would come to me and say, I just cannot, similar to your situation, like I can't get him to focus, like he won't turn in his work, he won't like, she's like, maybe if you talk to him, because you have a different relationship with him. And I would just pull him aside, listen, if you can't make the right choices, do the right thing, you will not be able to participate in robotics. And it motivated him. He was on his best behavior because he did not want to miss robotics. The one on the right in the red hoodie, he was one of 4 boys, and his brothers all were very active in sports, very tall, very athletic. His mom would come to me and say, like, he doesn't have a place. Like he's always comparing himself to his brothers. He doesn't really have a place. He discovered robotics, and she would pay me in tears. Like he finally found where he belongs, and he found his niche, and he found like what motivates him. So it's just 2 very different, it attracts so many different students. Some coaching ethics we need to think about. I know we talked about competition, but trophies should not be your motivator. I know it's like, it's easy to get fixated on like, I gotta win the trophy, and the kids get like that too, right? Like they really want to win the trophies. We want to make sure it's very clear and set that level of precedence that this is not all about winning competitions. It's all about the things that I've already listed, how it makes them better versions of themselves, and instills all those soft skills in them. So it should not be all about the trophies. Try your best to like get that away and like don't let that be a motivator. It's fun, but it should not be the main thing.
I will say, we don't want you to, I think you'll probably mention, we want trophies to be how you measure success.
Yeah.
In your program, but at these local competitions, there might be 7 or 8 trophies that they give out. And some of these trophies are like the spirit of. So I would also, again, we don't care if you win trophies or not. You shouldn't either. But I would look at what competitions you're going to and what awards they're giving out. And show your students and say, hey, this competition is going to give out first and second. It's going to give out who's got the best skill score. But it's also going to give out who's got the best energy. Who's got the most creative robot design. Who's got the best engineering notebook. And so then your students can maybe have a goal outside of like, I just want to compete, I just want to finish a match, I want to finish a competition. Give them maybe something to strive for, but also, tempering their expectations. And if they don't get it, doesn't mean they fail. It just means that the next competition will work.
Yeah.
So it's kind of 2 ends of the, we don't want you to win trophies, but there's also a decent amount of trophies to win. And they're not all, did you win a competition? A little more fun.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that leads straight into failing is okay. Like we need to start normalizing failure, like and what we can gain from it, and not put such a negative attachment to it. And so when they're gonna fail constantly with robotics, like they're gonna hit dead ends all the time. They're gonna test it and realize it doesn't work so many times. And when you are there to coach them and encourage them and say, hey, it's fine. Like, look at what we learned from this. Yeah, it didn't work, but look at what all we learned from knowing that it didn't work. That is going to go a very, very long way. This is random, but I just recently watched on Netflix, about, SpaceX. I don't know if anybody's watched that documentary, but it's so good. And whether you're an Elon Musk fan or not is irrelevant, but he talks so much about like, we failed so many times, like, and we learned so much from all of those failures. A lot of them were expensive mistakes, but you learned so much from that. And really it was like, not, and I love NASA, I'm not downing NASA, but the difference between the two of like NASA, they can't afford to make mistakes. SpaceX can afford to make mistakes. And how much more they've grown from that is huge. So, little tidbit there. And this should be student run, student built, and adult organized. So, in the past, we've had some issues with too many adults getting involved. Think about a science project or any project that kids bring home, and what happens? The mom and dad do it, right? And that is not okay in robotics. And it's been a process that REC has been working through, because they're the ones that have to kind of monitor that and can have some control over that. So there is now a student-centered policy that will be linked at the end so that you guys can review that. In my experiences, I've had coaches or parents that I've had to sit down with them and very nicely say, let's review this document together, because I don't think you're following all of this. And you can like, when you start involving parents and other adults in your robotics practices, it's your responsibility to make sure they are not overly involved. So, and in no situation should adults have their hands on the robots. If you're at a competition and a judge is walking by and they see an adult, now like if you're maybe carrying it, or like we're talking like if you are repairing it, if you are fixing it, or if you are programming it, you can guarantee that you're probably gonna be called out and it's not gonna be good. And ultimately the ones that are going to suffer is going to be the students, because in some cases they could be disqualified. We volunteered at the World Championship in Dallas and witnessed, these are teams from 60 different countries that come together. So naturally you're gonna have varying levels of like what people consider to be student-centered. And it was non-stop, like calling, like warnings, disqualifications, like nonstop. So we just all we can do is help control what's in Indiana and make sure that we are doing our part to follow the student-centered policy, and just to make sure that it is student-run, student-built, adult organized. So the adults are doing the organization, you're doing the encouraging, you're there for them, you're asking things like, well, okay, well, tell me what happened. Okay, have you tried this? Okay, what about this? Have you tried that? So you're offering suggestions and you're guiding them, but you are not doing it for them. Project Lead the Way used to say, when I did my Project Lead the Way training, you're the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. And it is very true. Like you're just on the sidelines. It's very much about the students.
Before you move on, Jamie, somebody has a good comment in the chat, moving back to like trophy should be your motivator and failing's okay. We'll talk about engineering notebooks here in a little bit. And they had their students compete against themselves. What is your PR? Are you measuring success at where you started in your program versus where you've ended, not how many trophies were here? So I thought that was a great point to mention that having the students be successful against themselves is more valuable than having them be successful against other students.
That's good. I'm just no dad mom bots. I think we've covered that. And you definitely do not need to have all the answers. Like I can't stress this enough. And I still like, I'm leading this training and I don't have the answers. Like there are still things we're going to go over the scoring and I'm going to be like, I think this is right. Because you're still learning. Like it's still every year the challenge changes and it takes time to navigate that and to figure all of that out. The same thing with the builds. Like there's still things that I coached for 5 years. There are still things I could not help a student with because I'm like, ooh, I don't know how that works. Like gear ratios. I still don't understand gear ratios. Some coaches really do. Like I just don't. But I know where to find videos to explain it. And I'm happy to point you to them. And that's what you need to focus on. Like you don't have to have all the answers. And kids, they like to hear you say, you know what, I don't know, but let's figure it out together. I'm going to learn as you learn because I don't know the answer to that. There's no shame in that. So we need to get away from like being worried. We feel like as a teacher, we have to have all the answers and we have to be an expert. Our goal is to make you feel more confident and competent, not for you to be an expert in robotics, because it's not what you need. You just need to be a good coach to these kids. They're gonna run with it. You're gonna be amazed at how much they can accomplish without your help. They can do so much independently.
At state, we've got state winners where the coach is their transportation and that's all they do.
Yeah.
And you've got some coaches that are a little bit more involved, so it's positive what's best for your students. You know your students better than we do, but as involved as you want to be, I would say as a first year coach, maybe more than just transportation. But you definitely don't need to have a.
And this, for me, I was a process for me. I kicked off thinking I really needed to know the answers and stress myself out so much. Finally, like started letting go and just letting them run with it and saw such progress. Like this picture on the left, my team was in the red and they on their own, like printed out an image of the field and at the competition went and found their alliance partner, complete strangers from another school, kids they'd never met. And they're like, okay, we're gonna ready to do a match together. Our robot can do this. What can your robot do? Like, I mean, they're just doing this independently and you need to just trust your kids and let them do that. And it might be you saying, hey, have you found your alliance partner yet? Have you talked strategy yet? Like, have you asked them what their robot can do things? Like, you can guide those things. And then over time, they're gonna do it on their own. And you're not gonna have to help them at all. They're just gonna do it. And so that was a powerful, I had to capture an image of it because I'm like, oh my gosh, like they don't need me at all. Like they're doing this. And then the right one, this was at the World Championship 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I was no longer coaching. I was there with the foundation, but these are some of my former students and I snapped a picture because I was also very proud. But right before they had a match, they tripped on the field and dropped the robot into lots of pieces, right before a world championship competition. And so this is a testament to the robotics community because everybody came around encouraging them that they could get this assembled. There are adults involved, but they're passing them the pieces that flew across the field to say, here's this one, you've got this, it's gonna be okay. And then other teammates from another team are helping them, get it back together. And it's a perfect image of the robotics culture and community of like, yeah, we're about to compete against you, but we're gonna first help fix your robot before we do that. It's very much the robotics culture.
All right, with that said, I know you're all thinking about how many times you think you're gonna drop their robot.
Yeah.
At competitions, your pits are gonna be a little, and again, we'll talk about all this in probably throwing terms of you don't know. Your pits will be away from the competition area, so your kids are gonna have to carry their robot to and from where they're home bases where they're competing. Most teams have either wagons that they put the robot in or like big totes that they carry their wagon in. I would not have, especially if you're in the elementary space, I would not have your kids carrying the robot in their hands around. These controllers also have little spots for lanyards. And these are the #1 things that get left behind at competitions. Controllers. Do not drive your robot without your controller. So I would buy a little cheap from the dollar store lanyard and whoever your driver is, just have it say, this does not leave your neck for the rest of the day. So, yes, they tripped, broke their robot. That is a rarity. Get a wagon if you can afford it. If not a wagon, a tote. Get a lanyard. For VRC, you'll be fine. If you drop your robot, you'll probably break the floor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you don't have to like win something.
No, we will
Well,
encourage everybody
To compete.
Oh, to compete, you have to qualify, but anyone can go
You
to
can
watch. Yeah, it's open to the public.
But to compete, you gotta actually go.
You have to qualify, yeah.
Ask for team.
Mhm.
Like we enter all 4 teams. Being qualified.
As many teams that qualify can go to state, so if you have 4 that go to a local competition, that would be impossible for all 4 to qualify. Well, maybe not impossible, trying to think we'll go over like competitions and what awards are qualifying and all of that. But hypothetically, yes, they could all qualify, yeah. I think you're up.
All right, any questions before we kind of go over? We got a couple more slides and we'll do a break and we'll split up into the IQ and VRC. But any questions on
Coaching, ethics, running
It's scary, right?
team?
Like hopefully we
Yeah.
feel better and not. Okay, good.
That's good.
That's what we want. Excitement.
Okay, so all of you are fairly new into the robot community. So we're gonna break out what a typical season calendar looks like. This is not set in stone. We want you all to do what works best for you and your students. We have some teams that have already built their robot for this upcoming game. They host summer camps and they build robots then. You do not need to do that. In fact, if you started building in October, you are perfectly fine. August, we want you to get back into the swing of things for school. Does anybody start next week? No? August? Okay. Seems like summer's getting shorter and shorter. Soon you'll have like a 4th of July break. In September, we want you, once you've gotten back into the swing of things, we want you to start thinking about how you are going to assemble your team. Are you going to do invites? Are you going to do open tryouts? Are you going to make students submit why they think they should be a part of this team? Are you going to look at kids, if you're in the middle school space, are you going to look at kids who maybe have done elementary? You figure all that out, start thinking about it and start contacting the students, parents. And if you have any co-coaches, I know we have a co-coach here, I think. Co-coach here, get some volunteers if you think that you might need them, not necessary. Tons of programs are run just by a singular coach. Sometimes it's nice to have an extra set of hands. Don't forget about your pre-surveys. I'll send you emails about that. And then start building out what your build season is going to look like. We have some coaches who open up their classrooms like in the middle of the day. Kids come in like during their lunch, or if they have homerooms, if they're old enough for that, they'll come work on the robots. We've got some coaches that do after school, maybe once or twice a week. We have some coaches that, based on their schedule, are only able to do it a couple times a month. That's okay. I would say this is really more geared towards IQ. So VRC we'll talk later. You can build so there's they call it the Hero Bot, which is VEX's robot for doing the competition. I would not take that robot to a competition, but it gets you a starting place. The robot that it suggests you build can play the game, just not well. You can build that robot, especially if you've got some focus kids in about, I don't know, 4 practices. So think you can get a robot built in a month if you're only meeting once a week. So just to kind of give you a good frame of reference on what your build season should look like. You've got maybe some more squirrely kids, or maybe some younger kids who takes a little bit longer for their motor skills to get to working. It might be a little bit longer, but I think 4 practices at maybe an hour or 2 should be more than enough time for you to build your base robot. Your build season will continue into October. We want you to have a built robot maybe by your fall, or is fall and Thanksgiving break the same thing, different things? Let's go with Thanksgiving. We'll go with Thanksgiving break. And attend any coaches' webinars, watch our videos, especially as you start to get ready to go to competitions. And we want you to register for a competition. This is not us just saying go to a competition. Students are going to work best if you say you need to have a robot built by December 15th. We're going to this competition, whether or not your robot drives, whether or not you are ready, whether or not your coding looks great. We are going to this competition. It's better than saying, we'll go to a competition eventually once your robot's built, because the kids are just going to want to tinker all day. They're just going to want to drive the base robot around and it gives them a good end goal, right? You guys, teachers, you work on due dates. If you gave a kid and said, hey, at some point in time, I need you to write this paper. That paper's not getting written. You need to tell them when it's due. So when you get into October, November, start looking at local competitions. For maybe some of you rural coaches, I would look sooner rather than later, just because those competitions tend to fill up a lot faster. Not as many schools, and those schools that do have competitions, they don't have a lot of space, so they're a little bit limited on how many teams they allow. But if you're an indie, there's multiple competitions every single week and weekend. If you are in an area and you have no competitions, you could also be an event partner. I'm not going to sell too hard. I don't even know if we talk about it anymore, but event partners, you would host a competition. Jamie and I can help get you started. We help new coaches start competitions all the time. It's a great way to bring in money to your program because you can charge teams to come and participate. Your kids, you get the home field advantage, right, of playing in their own gym on their own fields. So if you're in an area where you realize that you've got 2 competitions for the whole year and they've already filled up, and you don't want to drive an hour to Indy or Lafayette or Evansville, like just not let us know. Look into being event partners and then let us know if you do want to be an event partner. When November kicks up or starts, I would start having your students practice the game. So hopefully they have their robot built. We cannot stress this enough. Practice driving. It sounds like a no-brainer that like, oh, the kids are just going to drive the robot around. But once they start building, they really just want to build, which I think is unique to robotics. Like if I was a robotics kid, I would just be walking around the classroom driving the robot, but they really just want to build. And you don't want the first time that they're driving to be at the first competition, because you'll have the other robots zooming around them. Practice driving. If you have to have a whole day, if you say you do 3 practices in a week, which I know might sound like a lot, I'm just using it as an example. Now I would spend 2 days on building/coding, and then I would spend 1 whole day on, let's do time trials. Let's drive around the field. Let's compete on this field. Let's see what our best score can be. Prep them for competition. December, same thing. Enjoy your break. Practice. If you want to so this is kind of where you as a coach determine your students. Some students take their robots home over Christmas break. They'll host practices at their houses. Just gives the opportunity for the students to engage with each other. We also have some coaches that says, oh, I'm not letting you take that robot home. Whatever works best for you and your students is going to be perfectly okay. There's not an advantage to letting the students work over Christmas break versus not. Just letting you know that some coaches do that. Some kids don't want to be away from their robot for 2.5 weeks. January, this is kind of when the competition season kicks up. You'll see competitions that start right when school starts. In a nice way, you are not going to be ready for those. We are going to say that you'll be ready for a competition, just not that early. So January, February, start looking at competitions. You'll probably want to start looking at those in November because, again, they do fill up. They cost money anywhere from
$70.
Yeah.
That's for your whole team, not per person.
Mhm.
And then I would say for high school, it's probably gonna be 70 to 100.
Yep. Some event partners, not all, might offer discounts if you're able to bring a competition field. So you'll all get competition fields from us. Just be on the lookout for those kind of opportunities if that cost is going to be a little bit too much. But we also don't want that to be a factor that restricts you from competing. We understand school circumstances are varying and different. So let us know if that is an option or an issue, and we'll help lay out some options. So again, we want you to, at least in January and February, attend 1 competition, maybe 2, because you'll get that first one. And just like your students, you're going to learn so much from that first competition. When we split up, Jamie and I will talk about what competitions look like. And you think after this training, you're like, oh, I know what a competition is. And you get there and you're scrambling around, you're trying to figure out what's going on. So your second one, I think, is going to be a lot more impactful, but your first one is going to be a great learning experience. March is when the season ends. So it's not, first day of school to last day of school. March is when our state championship is, and the end of April is when Worlds is. So if you haven't qualified for state, your season's done. We would encourage you to attend state. It is an awesome event. Last year we had 351 teams. It was at Lucas Oil Stadium. So just like the football state championships at Lucas Oil, and I don't know, is basketball, are they at Bankers Life? We'll say basketball's at Bankers Life because I don't know any different. Gamebridge. I still call what's the concert up in?
I call it Deer Creek.
I call it Clips.
Yeah.
I think it's Ruoff now, the generations. And then you have Worlds. If you qualify for Worlds, it's a little expensive. We like to do what we can to help support that. If any of you make it to Worlds, we will be very impressed. And then May, your school's out for summer and you're ready for the next year. You don't have to think about hosting a robot camp in the summers. There are schools that offer camps for other teams. So you could always, if your kids loved it, they want to do more of it, you could always think about attending those. But your season is really going to be from October to March. Any questions?
Echo.
Yeah.
So for our, initial funding to get the program up and going, does it include the first year's elements of the competition?
It does. It does.
And when do those arrive?
when they're in stock. They released,
Build season, I didn't know build season, if that's when we're putting those elements together.
yes, that, oh, that's a great point. I would spend your first practice putting the field together before they start putting their hands on the robots. Once, like, they'll know if the field's put together right or wrong, because it's very, like,
Use them as free labor.
yes,
But those are gonna be shipped to us.
they will be, yeah.
They have been before.
They have been, yes. The problem is so they released the game at Worlds for like the upcoming year. So they released this game in late April. And as soon as they did that, everybody all over the world bought all of their stock. And so now they're kind of backfilling on their second big group of orders, which will be us, hopefully.
And follow-up question, we'll just be responsible for the next year's.
Right.
Which would be the 150.
Right. Yep. You got it. And
Team registration.
yes. And team registration.
For team registration, we pay for that in the first year, that's $200. Any additional team that you want to add this year would be your responsibility. And that, I think they upped it to 175 this year, it used to be 150, I think it's 175 now. So they do give you a little bit of discount on additional teams, and then next year, when you register your team, that will be on you next year, so. Yeah.
And if that is an issue for all of you, again, we know. Yes, we know how school administrations can be, how difficult it is for you all to get money. If there are issues that you run into regarding money, please let us know, because we want you to compete. We want your students to have a blast and to love the opportunity. Like, on top of the kids having fun, we want you to have fun. We don't want this to be stressful outside of like normal stresses of coaching something. So any financial burdens that you run into, please let us know. Here is just a quick what your meetings could look like. So spend time talking about your team structures. And again, we'll break this down when we split into our groups. What is the role on each team, and who are those kids going to be? You can have tryouts for drivers. You can have, maybe one student is really into art and they just want to work on the engineering notebook. So lay out those roles and what they're going to look like. You should also have somebody who is an expert on game rules and scoring. Because if a student comes up to you and says, what happens if this, and this happens? You should be able to point. Chris knows. He'll do it. He'll figure it out for you. So have somebody understands the game rules, but everybody should know. So I would spend some time reviewing the game. There's a video we'll show you all of the game. I would spend time doing that. For your next month after that, basic build bot. We'll show you what that looks like, learn about all the parts, allow everyone to drive, like I said. You can decide if you want everybody to have the opportunity to drive, or if you found a good driver and you just want them to drive. We have teams that do both. Again, you know your students better than we do. And I know it sounds like a cop-out, but whatever works for you is gonna work for us. Discuss some game strategy. So this year's game is interesting. We're gonna leave you in suspense. But talk about game strategy, because you don't want the first time your kids are trying to work with another team be at the first competition and they don't know what to do. So break down the game. It's a minute long for IQ, a minute 30 for VRC. What are you going to do in the first 15 seconds? Okay, what are you doing in the next 15? What are you doing in the next 15? Sometimes you'll see kids who get up there, they're in front of, 50 family members and their friends, and something goes wrong and they kind of panic and they don't know what to do. So if you can break out what their game strategy is going to be, it gives them the ability to be like, okay, that didn't work, but now I know what I need to do next. So they don't freeze, especially at state when they're in front of thousands of people. Meeting 6, you hopefully have had a robot built. Let's talk about how to improve upon it. So like I said, the base bot, it can do the game. It's not going to do the game well. You're not going to see too many. I don't even know what it's called. Swish. It's called Swish because this year's game is basketball. Look at that, tying it into my analogy, man. You'll want to improve upon it. So spend some time talking about what works well on this robot and what doesn't work well, and the things that don't work well, what can we change? Then start building on those changes. You want to test, redesign, engineering process, right? Strategize, design, test, redesign. Kind of start that over. I'm sure that's definitely not the engineering design process. Maybe it's in a little bit. Oh, it's right at the bottom. Test, redesign, practice. And then scrimmage. If you have schools by you that have robots, ask if they want to do like a combined practice. Because most teams or most schools might only have one team. They can't They can practice by themselves, but when they go to a competition, there's gonna be another robot there. So they're gonna be kind of craving to have another person / team there to help. Questions about your calendar or your meetings? Yes.
Redesign in the initial thing, are we gonna get all the bits to redesign and make our stuff better, or do I need to buy it, like, build a kit first?
That's a great question. So everything that you need are in these kits. And that's what's nice when the game changes every year. Everything in these kits, like you can build a robot to compete in every single game, even as it changes throughout the year. The robot design that they'll give you will use a majority of these parts, but that's when you can. I wish maybe we should put pictures on here of like what your starting robot looks like and what it should end like, or what it should look like when it ends. But everything you need is in. They're all going to be in here. Yes. And that's what's nice about robotics is when you go to a competition, there's no two robots that are going to look exactly alike. You'll start to see just as like, what's the word? As like all the ideas come together for what the most, like what the best design is. So you'll start to see robots that look similar, but there's no two robots that are going to be the same unless
They're all the same challenge, so
Yeah.
naturally you're going to see similar robots because they're all trying to accomplish
Yeah.
the same thing. But you're gonna see different iterations, but all doing similar things.
But I guess I was long-winded to say everything you need is in these kits.
And then they're like, VEX came out a couple years ago with the Maddox system for IQ. It's entirely optional. You'll start to see some of the more competitive teams. The kit itself is like, I think it's like $150. It is in no way required or needed. But you might find that they need more 2x6 beams or whatever, and all of that you can be purchased like all apart on VEX website. Yeah,
Should I be looking at it?
not right now.
No, I think you're good now.
Right now you're perfectly fine, but as the years pass, we'll probably have kids like, I could really use, like, we could use some more of this, or some more of that, and all that can be is found on the website.
And your kits come with like a box of extra pieces too, which can be used to, you're gonna break and lose these pieces, so you can use either. First off, I would not let the kids get a hold of the extra pieces box, or else you're not gonna have an extra pieces box, and it's just an extra box. But you can use pieces from that box. I think and I don't know if we've mentioned this, but you can only compete with things in this box for IQ. So it is standard. All teams are going to be using these kits. Now you'll see some that have different colors. Those are just, they bought them online or have used them from previous years, previous games. But everybody's competing with these pieces for IQ. For VRC, it's a little bit different. Again, we'll talk when we split that up. I know that's so long-winded. All right, so sample team structures. I know I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we already discussed it a little bit. Obviously, you have your coach, and this is where you can start to get creative depending on how many students you have. So you'll have somebody who's an expert on the field and the rules. They're in charge of resetting the field. They're in charge of having all the questions for the rules. The game manual changes because kids are too smart for their own good. They will find ways to get around some of the rules. So the game manual updates pretty consistently of things that you can and cannot do. So you'll have a kid who becomes an expert at the beginning of every practice, checking in on the game manual because it's online. Has it changed? If it has changed, how does that affect our robot? You have somebody who does research and design, working closely with the builder, the electrical person to make sure that the robot is being built kind of how the team structure wants in an effective way. You'll have a programmer. That can usually be a person or two. You'll have a pit team when you get to competitions who's in charge of kind of like a team manager almost. And then you'll have PR if you want to do any kind of marketing, get any sponsors for your teams. Social medias, YouTubes, things like that. YouTubes, as if there's more than one. Structure B, for less students, you'll have somebody in charge of building the robot, somebody in charge of programming, someone in charge of all things not robots, so the field, the scoring, elements, rules, all that stuff, and then your PR again. And as you look at these, you can start to see what kind of students are going to best fit in some of these roles. What we don't want is, say you've got 3 boys and 1 girl, and you're like, well, that girl's going to go to PR, right? We do not want that to happen. We do find that the girls really like the engineering notebook, but that doesn't mean that they can't also be the programmer. So we want students to go into the roles that make sense, but we don't want you assigning roles based off of, oh, well, the boys are just going to be the builders. Because sometimes the girls, they keep those boys in check. When they're building, they're like, we got to stay focused. So I just I want to point out that you'll start to, if you already have the idea of what students you want on your team, have them explore different roles in the first couple of practices. Because you might be surprised what students are good at, what they're interested in, what they want to learn about. If a student is like, I don't know anything about programming, but I'd love to learn, boom, put them right into programming, let them get their hands dirty.
I'll just add, as a coach, I used to always say, like, building might be where your leadership is, but you need to understand all of it. You need to understand the notebook, you need to understand the programming, you need to know how to drive. You don't know if one of our main drivers is gonna be sick one day and can't compete, like, so I always emphasize, like, you need to understand, not only so that you can fill in those roles if you need to, but that you can appreciate those roles too, and understand what your teammate is doing. So I was always adamant about, you need to know them all, you need to understand them all. There might be, I have a leader that's on the notebook, a leader that's on building, a leader that's on programming, driving, but you need to understand all roles on the team.
You'd be surprised how many competitions we go to and the programmer's sick, and the kids are just like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We can't compete. Nothing's working because the programmer's gone, but they don't have the laptop that they need. So that's a good point. Make sure, again, they'll have their roles, but make sure that they kind of understand what each other are doing. Kind of like, in the workforce, everybody's in their own lane, but everybody knows what each other's lanes are doing. All right, another structure, you got your team build, or you have your robot builder, you have your programmer, and then you have the person who's in charge of everything else, maybe like a team manager type of situation. I think this is you, Jamie.
Yeah, I can talk about this.
Or-
And someone in the chat said the interview at competitions, there are adult judges that, each team is interviewed. And so when that interview happens, the judge is expecting all the students to communicate. So they have to all be able to speak about the robot. And the judges are anticipating that one kid is gonna know more about one specific area than another, but they should all have a part in that interview. We'll talk more about that because, well, a little bit of it here, I guess. So we've got the design process, the rubric. So each team the expectation is to have a design notebook, but it is not required. So if it feels like too much in year one, then I would say you can be okay with not doing it. But what I would urge you is developing the skills of being able to document your process and your thinking is such a valuable life skill. I would do whatever you can to start it from the very beginning, because even though it's not required, they get so much out of that process. So the more you can encourage it, I think the better. And if you start it earlier where it might feel overwhelming in the beginning, if you get them started on the right track, I think it's gonna pay off at the end. Certain awards can only be won if you have a notebook. So that just helps clear things up if you choose not to do a notebook. And then the kids are like, why didn't we qualify for that award? It could be because they did not have a notebook. So like a design award, for example, that it's all about the notebook.
And these could be in an actual physical notebook, or if the kids have access to laptops and do it on like Google Drive, they really got the PowerPoint. A good notebook is one day, a student trips over the field, drops a robot and shatters. They should be able to open that notebook to page one and rebuild their robot based on all of their ideas, all of their improvements, and get it back to where it was pretty quickly. So that's a good notebook.
Yeah, and it can, like you mentioned, it can be on paper or it can be digital. I'll show you, there's a template for the digital, which is really helpful. That's on this slide as well. But first I wanted to point out the rubric. So this is universal. We're talking over globally. The whole world uses this exact same rubric. And they've streamlined it now. So it's now also for all grade levels, elementary to high school. So regardless of what grade level, whether it's IQ or VRC, everyone's using this template. And so you have the criteria, you have the different levels, the points. So this is what judges are using when they are interviewing your students or looking over their notebook. So you have access to that. And I used to give it to my kids and say, you need to know this inside and out and make sure that this is lining up. And we would do practice interviews together. I would ask them questions and they, to make sure they could respond and make eye contact and speak clearly, all of those things. Here's the digital template. So the nice thing about this, when you go to a competition, when you register in robot events for that competition, you, in your profile, well, in your let me back up, in your team registration where you got your team number, it will ask you like what the team name is, how many boys, how many girls, things like that. You can always edit that. You can always go back and change your profile as you go. But in that profile, there's a place to put the link to your digital notebook. So I cannot recommend enough to do a Google Slides template, because what that provides is an active.
Sorry.
Sorry, her face. I know I'm getting too technical. The Google Slides presentation is an active link that stays, so as they're making updates, it's updating live. So if that link is on their profile, it's on the team profile, then you register for a competition, and the judges for that competition will be able to pull all those links for every team to be able to view the kid's notebook for the competition or at the competition, without you having to do any work. If you don't use a Google Slides presentation link, then you're gonna have to update that link. Or you're gonna have to upload an entire notebook, so if it's paper, you're gonna scan it all in. And then find and have a link for that to put there. Is that making sense? There we go.
I'll just say, I know that we're growing a lot, we're starting getting like the technical part, we've moved on from, we're happy you're here to.
Yeah.
Alright, now let's learn some stuff. When you guys go to register for events and stuff, if you're running into any roadblocks, you can reach out to us.
Yes.
The contact information of who's hosting is gonna be in there as well. Like, people want you to come to their events, right? So if you're like, I know I'm supposed to upload my notebook, but I don't know where, you can reach out to the event partner, you can reach out to us. We will, in a nice way, handhold you through this whole process.
Yeah.
Remember, I don't want you taking notes
Yeah.
and listening right now, but I know that you're not registering for an event. Our recommendation was in November. How many of you think you're gonna remember this process? Hopefully
Yeah.
all of you.
Remember, robotics culture is very, very supportive, very helpful, so we're here for you along the way. But I just wanted you to understand, you're making, the most important thing is to make a decision on whether or not you're going to do a notebook with your team. And so I want you to understand the full capacity of what it's, if you're choosing to do a notebook, this is how they present it, how they get judged. So the last thing I'll say, and then we will have a break, I believe. We have a partnership with Ball State with their communications, school communications. It has been an amazing partnership, and their students are doing mock interviews with our robotics teams all across the state. So keep that in mind as the season gets further along, and you're like, I really want my kids to have an opportunity to practice their interview with someone other than me or a volunteer that they already know. So these are complete strangers for their college students, so they're not as serious like a grown person, I guess. And then you can set up a virtual call with a Ball State team, and then we like train them on the challenge and what questions to ask, that like identical to what they would get at a competition. So keep that in mind as well. You'll see that promoted through social media or through email. Just that's what that is. Anyone can sign up for a time slot during your robotics practice for your kids to go on a Zoom call and practice with them.
You'd be surprised how many teams can make it to state where they have really good interview skills. And your kids aren't gonna wanna practice interview. So if you just say, hey, we're doing this today, and kind of force you to do it. Even if it's just one time, we get the feel for it, what kind of questions are gonna be asked. Especially for the younger kids. I don't think if I was in fourth grade, I'd wanna talk with an adult about my robot. Yeah. But it's a really good resource.
Yeah. Okay, I think you guys need a break. We just gave you a lot of information. So why don't you take, well, you can take 5 minutes if you want to get out a little bit early. You can take 10 minutes.
For those of you online,
Let's do 5 minutes. Is that okay, guys? If you use the restroom in the green building, straight in the middle, there's restrooms on both sides, both halls.
All right, for those online that are VRC, I'm gonna make a breakout room that I will invite you to join. If I can figure it out. How do I operate your computer?
How do you what?
I don't know how do I get to like regular, is this Zoom right here?
Down here, this bar down here.
Oh, there we go. Couldn't find.
So, hi.
One of Okay, for you VRC people online, I'm going to invite you to a breakout room. And then. Somebody else did? Okay, for those of you online, I've got Justin, I've got Chad, and then I should have Kelly. Is there anyone else that I'm missing? Tammy the extra. Is that okay? I think okay, I've got Tammy. Perfect. So I'm gonna open this room. You should get an invite to join the room, and I will be in that room momentarily. Okay. Don't close the room.
I'm not.
I'll come back for my trash.
You're fine.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck.
You too.
If I don't see you all before you leave, have a good school year.
I have a question.
Those of you online, just be patient with me since Andy moved to the high school portion. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. And then I will get to them as soon as possible. Where's it? I'm not sure who 47229 DEF. That message to rename was left over from state, so apologize for that. Tammy, I think I just sent you an invite. Okay, perfect. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, I think we're good. Like I said, don't hesitate to put questions in, and I'll try to check periodically. All right, I'm gonna move as fast as possible so that you guys can get out of here as fast as possible. The equipment, you will hear that there's Gen 1 and Gen 2. So Gen 1, Gen 2. A couple of years ago, everything was upgraded to Gen 2. Gen 1 is still competition legal, so if you have any of that equipment lying around, you can still use it. Gen 2 is just upgraded, better, works nicer, it's all Bluetooth enabled, where before it was like radios that you had to connect the two devices manually with the cord. So it's just an upgraded version with Gen 2. Everything that we do now is Gen 2, but I just want those of you that already have equipment in your building to know that you can still use Gen 1. They do sell, VEX sells an upgrade kit where you can do an upgrade from Gen 1 to Gen 2. That basically gives you like a new controller, new brain, new motors. I forget exactly how much it is. It's a couple $100. But that's an option if you have some old equipment and you're like, that would be a cheaper option to buy a whole new kit. I just want you to know that is available to you. There is a printable poster of all of the parts. I used to have these handy in my robotics room because when the kids are looking for pieces in the instruction, sometimes two pieces can be very, very similar and can make all the difference in the design and the build of the robot. So I would urge them, like, compare it to the poster, make sure you have the right one. For example, if the piece is called, like these are a perfect example, because they look very similar. Now Gen 2, they got smart and they changed the colors of them. Because in the old kit, they were all gray or all blue, and it'd be so, the little kids especially couldn't decipher between the different parts. So they've definitely, it's definitely gotten a lot better. Also, like the gears, sometimes they get confused about the gears. So I would just really urge them to check the poster and make sure they have it accurate. The controller is very much like a gaming controller. So a lot of your kids are gonna be very comfortable and familiar with the controller. It has, the Gen 2 has the radio built in, so it is Bluetooth enabled with the actual robot once it's assembled. The power button is right in the middle. I think I have so that you can set it up to be a joystick mode where pushing both forward moves the robot forward, pushing both back moves the robot in reverse. Or you can do a left stick drive or like a tank mode where only the left side, you can do all things, front, back, left, right. It's really just a driver preference. So the kids will discover what they like the best. I don't remember what the default is. But you'll, as you're building, as the kids are assembling their robot at the very end, it'll have them connected. And I think it gives instructions at the end, like how they want to set up their controller. But just know that it can all be adjusted. So in the programming side of things, they can adjust it all. They can decide what the buttons do. They can decide what these buttons do. They can assign this button to lift the arm. This one to lower the arm, so they have all that control to do that. They're going to figure it all out, so don't worry. They'll figure all that out. The battery is screwed in the back side of the controller. I'll show you a picture of that here in a second. The battery is the one on the right. These last for a very long time. The battery life is very, very strong. When it starts to die, you use a USB-C port and you can plug it in right here. And either into your computer, charge it, or into the wall. You have it like a cube put into the wall. So that's the way it's charged. And then the robot or the brain battery, this is what gives the whole battery life. So it's a whole brain life. The new Gen 2 ones have a feature where you can push the button to see the battery life, where before you have to put it into the brain and then turn it on, see what the percentage of the battery was. Now you can just quickly push the button and see what it is. And it's charged with a USB-C as well. VEX does have, this is actually from the VEX Go kit, which I think is brilliant. When I was a classroom teacher, outlets was like a hot commodity because I had so many different things I was plugging in. This is so nice because you can charge 5 at the same time. So highly recommend. This comes with the VEX Go bundles. I don't know if they sell these independently, but I highly recommend something like this where you can charge multiple at the same time. if you're gonna have multiple teams. Let me go back to the brain really fast. So the brain is there's a screen on the front, so it's very easy to follow as far as all the directions. When you turn it on, you're gonna have your different options. This is where you would store any programs that the students create to be able to run the robot autonomously. You obviously can see the battery life. You can see when it's connected to the remote. And this is where you go to turn it on, basically. So just because you turn it on doesn't mean the robot's gonna go. You have to turn it on and then move over to the run program. So for the default, this, again, the kids are gonna navigate all of this very, very quickly. But just very basic, 4 buttons, an X, a check mark, a left and right arrow. So very basic for students to understand. It has the ports on each side, so 12 total, 1 through 6, and then 7 through 12, all labeled with the smart cables. The smart cables, you do have to teach kids how to use these. For all of us, we know exactly what this is. It's a phone cord, right? But students have no idea what this is. They've never seen a phone attached to a wall before. So it sounds silly, but they will yank them out and break them. So you actually have to teach them, like, you have to push it, then pull it out. And when you put it in, you have to make sure you hear a snap. Like, you have to teach them that because it's very foreign to them. These come in different lengths. So if they need it to go higher or lower, they come in different lengths. Here's the charging that I referred to. This is another good power source to use, like where it's one outlet, but it has the USBs. That's another good option that you could charge multiple at the same time. When the remote is dying, you'll start to see the light flashing red, which is an indicator that you need to plug it in and charge it. I would do not keep your batteries in overnight. So at the end of a practice, I would get in the habit of taking the battery out, plugging it into the charger, or just taking it out altogether. I think it drains it faster if it's on there all the time, even if it's off. It just slides on and snaps in. And then you also teach the kids to push down, then pull out, because they will yank it and possibly break it. Sometimes it helps to push down and then push from the back end to get it out. So these are just things like practices you want to get them used to. Yeah.
Maybe in the whole school, but when you're charging the battery, you wait for it to die or the battery have a memory. Because sometimes when you start charging the battery, it doesn't charge.
I don't believe so. Like, I've not had any feedback. Most of what I've heard from coaches is they just, at the end of the practice, they just take it out and plug it in. I would say, I just learned this last season. I was shocked to hear most coaches, they prefer the Gen 1 batteries. And I had never heard that before. But I started hearing it more and more from coaches. So I don't know if there's anything to that, but they seem to think the battery life is longer on Gen 1. And apparently the Gen 1 batteries fit in here. So if you have any of those lying around, don't throw them away, because they sound like they work well too. Their charging is in a dock. So Gen 1 batteries, this one is just a USB-C to the wall. Gen 1 batteries is like a charging dock where it's plugged into the wall and then you just slide it onto the dock. So if you see that lying around, that's Gen 1 battery charging. There's the smart cables we talked about that connects all of your motors and your sensors. So here's an example of a motor. You can see it has the port for, I feel sorry for the ones at home. It has the port for the smart cable, and then it has the holes down here where the metal shafts go into to rotate the motor. And all of that is in the directions to build. And then you have your sensors too that can also go into those ports. So like vision sensors, bumper sensors. There's your motor. And we'll talk about how many motors they're allowed to have on their robot a little bit later. And then the Andy referenced the heat robot. So here is like kind of the history of all the heat robots. So every single year when there's a new challenge that comes out, they release a heat robot, minus VEX and REC are really more just for fun. But all the other ones, there's the traditional Clawbot is kind of universal for a lot of things. But all the others that have like link, slick, stretch, clutch, rise, swing. Those are all hero bots. So after the challenge comes out, then I would say a month or two after, VEX will release, here's a suggested build for this challenge. It's very intentional in the sense that this is something that will score you points for this challenge, so it's a starting place. But it is not going to get you all that you want, like, so they're very intentional in making sure that the build is good, but not good enough, good enough to get them excited and get them engaged. But not good enough to like score, to score high points. Because the point is to encourage iteration, encourage them to test it, to build upon it, modify it, figure out like what needs to happen. What do I need to add, take away, modify, things like that. So you'll notice that with this, what we recommend for new teams is start with the hero bot. It's a step-by-step, it's a no fail, they're gonna get something out of it. So that's what we recommend to new teams. It's not required. You can do whatever you want, like absolutely whatever you want. If some kids are gonna be like, I don't wanna follow that. I have watched the challenge. I have some ideas. I know what I wanna build. Ultimately, it's your decision as the coach. When I was coaching my new teams, I required them to do the hero bot. I said, after that's built, I don't care what you do. You can start over from scratch if you want. You can modify whatever you want, but you will build the hero bot. My more experienced teams that were coming back and returning, I let them do whatever they wanted to do. So it's your decision as the coach. Just know that the only thing that has set directions is the hero bot. So if they don't do the hero bot, then they're on their own. Like they have to just start building. And some kids can do that. Uh-huh. The one at the top is not working. Oh. Okay, well, let me show you on the VEX website, so vexrobotics.com. When you go to the downloads, because this is good to know anyway, whenever you're trying to find any build, and then scroll down to build instructions. And then this is also, the build instructions are going to be linked, I think, at the end of the presentation as well. Of course, now it's not working. Let me try to switch it to IQ. I feel like this website has been lagging lately. Well, it should work when you click on build instructions. I'm going to just Google VEX IQ build instructions. Okay. So this is where you're going to find every single build, the history of all robot builds, basically. And what I went to vexrobotics.com and then IQ under downloads, build instructions. And that you can point kids here too, if you have a team that does not want to follow the hero bot, and you're okay with that, then direct them here and say, get some inspiration, see what is available. If you want, these are all directions that you could follow. Maybe you just want them to start with a base bot and then they can build off of that. There's options there for a base bot. Yeah.
But all of that comes from that kit.
Yes. Yes. So you'll see in the parentheses where it says, I'm sorry, this says education kit, which is very similar. You're going to find very similar pieces, but you'll see in parentheses second generation. That means that it has all the parts in there that you need. If you scroll down, here is where the competition kit builds, second generation. Here is where you're going to find all those hero bots. So the very first one is always going to be the most current one. So Swish is this year's hero bot. So you can see that listed there. And now, right now, and it does remind you, this requires the IQ second generation competition kit to build. So as I said, generation 1 is still competition legal, but there are no hero bot directions for generation 1. So note that. Yeah.
So just to clarify, the idea is that they build the hero bot and then they modify in their own way, like according to the calendar.
Yep.
But like the rules or whatever.
Yep.
So like if they want to add an arm or
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. And you can see like there's 3D build instructions. I don't know if they're gonna add the PDF ones. The previous ones had PDF option. The 3D, it is nice because you can zoom in, zoom out, rotate, look at all sides of it. And we can even just click on that so you can see for yourself. The PDF would be more like you would be obviously flat on the screen. It has the option to print if your students work better that way. But the nice thing about this is it goes step by step. It's very interactive. So it's gonna like guide them through step by step. And then they can actually like rotate it around. Like, okay, I just did that. Now let me just make sure I put that in the right place. So they can look at all sides of it. So that kind of gives you an idea of the directions.
Great, isn't it? You go right into switch, no way stop those.
Yeah, I would recommend going straight into Swish, just having them build that, because it's gonna help build their confidence. Because it's a big build, so they're gonna feel really accomplished once we get it done. And because it's built specific to the challenge, right away, you can be like, okay, now put it on the field, see what you can do with it. And they're gonna be able to do things with it, which is gonna be encouraging, but then they're gonna quickly realize, okay, they might even be able to take it to their first competition. But they're gonna realize pretty quickly, like, if I wanna score more points, I need to modify this. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
So. In the slideshow that we had with all the different.
Yeah.
How to build, whatever. Do you suggest having them brainstorm and come up with what they want their robot to do before they build Switch? Or build Switch, play the game, like, and see, and then brainstorm? Like, do you think that would like pigeonhole them?
Yeah.
And like, you want them to do big and then build Switch?
I think, I like it, I would show them the challenge and say, start asking, like, what kinds of things do you think the robot needs to do in order to score points with this challenge? And then it's like, great news, here's Swish that does a lot of those things that you just brainstormed.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean, like,
And so then you can be like, what are we still missing?
Yep.
Okay.
exactly, yeah. Yep, because if it's too open, too broad, they're gonna feel defeated and overwhelmed. So give them the opportunity to take ownership and brainstorm, but then give them what they need, give them the tools. Here's Swish, and this robot is gonna help us accomplish all of those things. Now, let me check on the chat really fast. Oh, okay. Looks like we're doing good. In the midst of our VEX Go training, when we did our pilot for VEX Go, this was the younger kids, the teachers with the younger students. One of the teachers gave me this feedback, and I said, I'm gonna use that, because I think that's so good, and I would love to have this when I was coaching. Because nothing is worse than a student building half the robot and then realizing they made a mistake 20 steps back. And then they have to rebuild and they lose a whole day of practice. Like it's defeating and it's very frustrating and sad for a student. So this could save you some tears and save you some frustration. She would put this in her classroom and she would tell them when you're building, always follow the 4 P's. First, you're gonna position. Which way does the piece face? Do I have the pieces facing the way that they need to go? So they're watching the screen, they're looking, okay, is this the right position? Then they ask themselves, which holes do I use? Because if you can if they go off one hole, it could screw up everything. So you're having them count to make sure they're putting it in the right holes. And then third, they push it. They actually push the pieces together, assemble it. And then before they move on, they have to ask themselves, is it perfect? Check to make sure that you did it exactly as the picture shows before you move on to the next step. It might slow them down a little bit in the beginning, but I think it will save them frustration in the end. So I wish I would have had this when I was coaching, because I would have used it all the time. Because I had a lot of tears. And then as the adult, you wanna be like, here, let me just fix it for you, you know, let me just, and you can't. So you have to navigate all that with them. If we had everything with us, we would do the speed build right now. The speed build is under 30 minutes. It's just the base spot. But what I'm gonna encourage you guys to do is as soon as you get your equipment, try to carve out 30 minutes to get your equipment out, unpackage it, go to this speed build and just put it all together. It's gonna be pretty quick, but it's gonna give you a really good indicator of like, what can I anticipate my students, you know, running into, what does it feel like, how, you know, it's really important for you guys to experience that. So I can't make you do it, but I'm really encouraging you. When your equipment comes, I know you guys are very, very busy, but see if you can carve out just a few minutes to throw this build together, because I think it will help a lot to understand the process. All right, now the fun stuff. Okay, competition. So we call them teamwork challenges. And Andy used that great term, competition or whatever. Because it's perfect. It is. It's very cooperative, but it is a competition. So it's not like battle bots. They're not fighting each other. They're actually getting paired with another robotics team completely randomly. So you go to a competition after every single team checks in. They're generally teams within your area. Like some people will drive long distances, but I would say generally it's teams within whatever area you're in. Let's say there's 40 teams there. So when every single team is checked in, the computer software is going to generate alliance matches. So they're going to have generally 6 matches in that competition. So it's generally like most of us, like it's like 9 to 3 on a Saturday. Once it generates those, then the match schedule comes out, and then the students see who they're paired with. So let's say your team 1, 2, 3, 4A, and then you're like, okay, in match 1, I'm going to be paired with team 2, 5, 4, 6, 7C from another school. And so then those 2 teams have to work together to score as many points as possible in 1 minute. So it's very cooperative. It is very much about teamwork. You have 1 minute to do that, and you basically get 6 matches throughout the competition. I'd say 6 to 8 to be able to pair with different teams from different areas. And that would be a time when I would like rotate different drivers in and out to give them more opportunity to drive. And get different configurations, especially in that first competition, to see like who pairs well together, who does driving well together, because they're gonna have 1 minute. One person drives for 25 to 35 seconds, and then they pass the remote to the other driver and who finishes driving for the rest of that minute. So it's a pass off. And we'll look at some images here in a minute to help explain that. The other part of a competition is the skills challenge. So thinking about the teamwork challenge, you have no idea who you're gonna be paired with. It's completely random. You didn't have time to practice with them. You don't know what the robot can do. You have to on the spot figure it out. The skills challenge is an opportunity for teams to showcase what they can do by themselves. So all the practice they put in, everything that they've accomplished in practice, they knew they could score 50 points by themselves. The skills challenge is an opportunity in a competition for them to go and show what they can do by themselves. So it's generally a separate space at a competition. We'll show like a map of like the competition to show you that, but it's entirely driver controlled. There's 2 options. There's the driving option and the programming option. There is no programming in the teamwork challenge other than like if you're programming your remote to do something, a specific action, but there's no autonomous driving. There is no programming in the teamwork challenge. The only option is in the skills challenge, and it is optional. You don't have to do the skills challenge, but I'm going to explain why you might want to do the skills challenge. It is not required, but every single competition, the team gets 3 opportunities to drive and 3 opportunities to do programming. And they can do those anytime throughout the competition for the whole day. So in between their matches, they might get in line for a skills challenge. That skills score that they get, so let's say they're doing a driving skills and they get 100 points driving. That score stays with them for the whole season. So it goes in robot events into what we call the World Skills Standings list. So it then places them somewhere amongst other teams in elementary IQ or middle school IQ in the whole world. So they're now placed somewhere on that list based on that score. If they go to their second attempt and they get 101 points driving, that 100 has now been deleted and their now best score is 101. So that might put them higher on the list against other teams in the world. Then if they say, okay, we did a program, we programmed our robot to, it could be as simple as move forward. Last year's challenge was like a peg, they knocked it over, they got 5 points. Very minimal, didn't require a lot of programming, but a lot of teams realized like they could repeat that program 3 times, knock off 3, get 15 points and get them on the leaderboard, you know? And so they can go to the programming, let's say they get 15 points on programming. So they had 100 on driving, 15, so now they have a score of 115. If we add that 1 point, 116. So they've done those attempts and they now score 116, that places them on that skills list. Okay, so what's the advantage of being on that skills list? Number one, it gives them more opportunity to do more, right? So you can get more kids involved. It gives opportunity for them to program, opportunity for them to drive more. But what it also does is it gets them on that list where they could qualify for state based on that score. Like, it's not about the competition, but it's something that it's kind of like a consolation. You know, like, okay, we didn't win this competition, but we improved our skills for this competition, which is really important because it represents who we are as a team. This is what we've been able to accomplish. So it pays off what they've been doing in practice by themselves. They don't have an outlier of like, we have another team, we've never met them, their robot doesn't work as well as our robot. It removes all of that and gives them the option to do that independently.
Can I be the same driver?
They can, yeah, there's no rules on which driver, like who does it, as long as it's from that same team, it doesn't matter.
Programming.
So for the programming challenge, what they would do is they would fill out a program online, like block-based programming.
Is it, yeah, like, what's
Yeah, so we'll go over that here in just a minute. It's through VEX, so I'll give you a link for it. Yeah, so it works, so that way it works with all the products. Yep,
The skills challenges are for a whole team, not an individual.
it is for the whole team, yeah, so you can
But
rotate it out who is,
Will do.
Yeah.
The skill.
yeah, so they will only allow this year 3, it's usually 2 drivers. First year ever, there's a third team member at the field, because now they're doing a match loading. But they only get 3 chances.
They're the same person.
They could be a different person. As long as they're from the same team, it doesn't matter. So you could have, student A is like, I'm gonna do a skills, well, it's actually 3 students. So you have A, B, and C that are doing it, and then maybe D, E, F are doing it the next time. So as long as they represent the same team, they're gonna go up to skills and the person working skills is gonna say, what's your team number? So they're gonna say, I'm from team 1, 2, 3, 4A. And they're gonna say, okay, are you gonna do a programming or are you gonna do driving? And then, so they'll tell them either programming or driving, because they have to put it into the computer system so that it's accurate on the skills list. It's a lot. I don't want to overwhelm, but I want you to feel prepared when you go to a competition.
So would you say, so everyone needs to do a bit of teamwork?
That's mandatory,
The
yes.
other ones are on.
Yep.
So depending on, I guess, the level of student that you're working with, would it be possible to kind of this ease into?
Absolutely.
Or even this,
No, I'd say you can eat, and I see that all the time, like, you might go to your first competition and you only do the driving portion, you don't even do a programming attempt. And then what ends up happening almost every time is the kids watch the other teams, and they're like, oh, I could do that. Or so they'll even go to the other team they've never met and say, will you show me how you did that? And they always do, like, yeah, I'll show you, you know, and they'll show them. And then at the next competition, they're like, okay, this time we're gonna try programming. We didn't do it last time, but we're gonna do it this time.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I discussed this, but for the skills challenge, is it 2 robots on the same field at the same time?
The skills is 1 robot, and I'm gonna show you a visual that I think is gonna help. Yep.
I
Yep.
just think they would just keep.
Oh, no, it's 1 robot. Yep. So I think this is, the next 2 slides are gonna clear up a lot of this. The teamwork challenge is 1 alliance, on 1 field made up of 2 teams, each with 1, so when I say 1 alliance, it's 2 teams. It's their alliance is working together, which is a little confusing. So 2 teams, 2 robots with 1 minute driver control. They're driving with their remotes. The skills challenge is 1 team, 1 robot, There's no autonomous for the driver skills challenge, and they have 1 minute. The programming skills, one team, one robot again, but this time they have 1 minute autonomous, so they cannot use the remote. That's only programming. And then this image I think will help too. So on the left, the left one is this teamwork or skills? Teamwork, because there are two, you can see they're from two different schools, right? It's obvious from their shirts. They're from two different schools, but you can see that there's two teams, each from different schools, but two team members. And one has a remote, the other one is no remote, right? So they're gonna drive for so what happens is when you get, it's a minute countdown. When it gets to 35 seconds, there's gonna be a sound that signals to the driver, okay, you have 10 seconds to switch your remote to the other driver. So we call it the start switch. So they'll get familiar with that and realize, okay, I need to start thinking about, I need to wrap up whatever I'm doing right now in the field, and I need to pass the remote. We talked about the lanyards, which are a great idea, but when they're driving, they should not have the lanyard around their neck. Because yeah, they're yanking it from the other player. And then they pass with the remainder of the minute goes to the other driver. So you can see how they're gonna pass the remotes off. Down the right side, we know this is a skills challenge. I wish they were wearing matching shirts, it'd be more obvious, but we know it's a skills challenge because there's only one team there. There's only 2 students and there's only one robot on the field. So that's how we know this is skills. Now, can you tell me, is this driving or programming? Programming, how do you know? No controller, right? They don't even have a controller in their hand, but their robot is clearly running autonomously because you can see over here, it's full of game elements. So they programmed it in advance. They downloaded that program onto the robot. And when they get up to the skills field, they push a button on the robot and it does the program. Okay. They are allowed to, easy, right? Sorry. Yeah, they will make it look easy. They will. It sounds very challenging to us. Yeah, you should. And then, what was I gonna say about that? Oh, they can do as many programs as they want. So what I mean by that is they can store as many programs in there as they want to. They can run a program to do one thing to score certain points, pick up their robot, move it back to a starting position, push a button for another program, score points, pick it up, move it back. So they can do that as many times as there's no limit to how many times they can do that. They can use it as a strategy. When they're driving, they cannot pick up their robot. When they're driving, they are just driving. Now, if their robot malfunctions or breaks in any way, they put the remote down on the floor or on the table to signify to the referee that they have a problem. Most of the time, the referee will see that their robot is broken or tipped over. They put that down, they can walk around, pick up the robot, bring it back to the starting position, and then continue driving. So that is only time you can touch a robot during the drive. Yeah.
So when it comes to like qualifying for state or qualifying for whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of confused about significant, like. Is it kind of like track and field where like you've got like pole vaulters, but then you also got high jumpers, and that's kind of like the autonomous versus the.
Let me explain the different awards, and I think that will really clear things up. So everyone's on a level playing field as far as like everyone's doing the same thing. It's like the tournament champion runs, everybody does, that's the minimum. Everybody has to do that. Optional things at a competition would be your notebook. If you turn your notebook in to be reviewed, if you want an interview, if you want to be interviewed by judges, those are optional things. If you want to do skills, that's an optional thing, but all of those things can still earn you awards. Qualifying for state, if you're at a local event, you have to win the competition. So the winners is an alliance. So like, let's pretend like these two are in the finals, they got the top score, they win the whole thing. Well, they both are getting invitations to state. They're from 2 separate schools, but they did it together. So you're actually getting 2 state spots in one win. In that same competition at a local event is the Excellence Award. So the Excellence Award is the highest award that any team can ever get. But it requires several things. They have to be the top in the competition throughout the day. They don't have to win it, but they have to be in the top, I want to say it's top 5. I have to look back on the requirements. The skills, they have to have one of the best skill scores. They don't have to be the top skill score, they have to be one of the best. They have to have a strong notebook with a strong interview. And then they could qualify for the Excellence Award. The Excellence Award is one team, but it's automatic qualification to state. So that's another option. And then some competitions, if they have enough teams present, they can offer a third qualifying award, which is the Skills Award, which is whoever has the top skill score of that competition. So that's the third way that you could win. A lot of them will give out the Judges Award based on notebook, interview, overall sportsmanship, how they're interacting throughout the day. They'll get like recommendations from the referees, from different people to say like who stood out to you today. It is not a qualifying award, but always exciting nonetheless. But it does not qualify for state. So all local events always have the teamwork as the qualifying and excellence at the minimum. Some will also have skills if it's a big enough event. And usually when you're at an event, they will go over that in the beginning meeting. They'll explain, this is what awards we're offering today. This is what qualifies for state. This is what does not qualify for state. So you always want to be in that meeting at the very beginning of that competition. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit. You guys got that right. This kind of gives you a lay of the land of a competition. And if you're online and I'm missing important questions, just unmute yourself and yell it out because I'm not able to monitor that chat as well as I'd like to. When you go to a competition, the very first thing you're going to do, there's going to likely be a check-in desk table as close to the entrance as possible. You're going to tell them your team number. You may not have that memorized. You may have to look it up in Robot Events if you're brand new. Another thing is your students are not going to know that number. I learned that the hard way, my very first competition. I didn't know what our team number was. My students didn't know what, I mean, we were a hot mess. I saw another coach with a Sharpie that was putting the team number. I was like, can I borrow that? And I'm just like learning as I'm going. And I just put their team number and now they know, and it only takes one competition and then they will always know their team number after that. But it's important for them to know their team number because it will be showing up everywhere as far as like when their matches are happening. They will be known by that team number the entire time. They do have a team name. I realized after some time that is important to kids to be able to, they want to choose that team name. So I would let them choose it and then I would go back into Robot Events and I would update it in the profile for that team number. Because then what happens is you're at a competition and there's an MC that's saying, next up we have team 1, 2, 3, 4A. And if it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4A, from whatever school, you know, like, and then the other team is like, and we are the Digital Dragons, you know, and the kids are like, oh man, we don't have a cool name. So I usually let them choose a name at the beginning of the season, and then I would update it so that when their name is being called off, when they're during the MC, when they're introducing them, and they're announcing that over the microphone to all the audience. So it means a lot more to them. So the layout, so you check in, let them know that you're there, because they can't start the competition until they know all the teams are present. Then what's going to happen is you're going to find your pit area. Your pit area is usually going to be a table and a couple of chairs, probably. It's your home base for the whole day. So think about it like NASCAR, you know, like where you're going to reload, you're going to refuel with snacks, you're going to change out tires, whatever you need to do. So you're making any fixes. It's a home base for the kids. The team pits are usually in number order by your team number, which makes it easier for you to find a alliance partner. So once you know who you're paired with throughout the day, the kids will go and find that pit area and introduce themselves to that team and say, you know, this is what my robot does. What can your robot do? How should we strategize for our upcoming match? So that's an important space to know about. They usually have practice fields somewhere. So if you have time, you can go with your alliance partner and say, let's do a quick run on the practice field together. So they generally have a practice field available. Some of them will let you bring your own field. It's a lot of work to do that. I would not worry about that. It's a lot of work. Like Andy said earlier, if it's going to get you a discount on the registration fee, then absolutely. But that's going to mean it's available to everybody and it's not just yours. Some teams will ask if they can bring theirs and put it in their pit area. I would always ask the EP first. Don't just bring it because that could be in the way. You don't know how much room they're going to have. But you will see the more competitive teams will bring their own field and, you know, this is our field. We're going to practice on it, you know, things like that. But that's not the norm. And then you're gonna have the fields set up in the main area. It's usually a gymnasium in most cases. You have the spectators, you have the kids will usually sit on the floor so they can be closer to the fields and see the action a lot better. You don't want like parents yelling out like, hurry, go faster. Like you want to kind of inform your parents in advance, like it's not like basketball where you're like, shoot it. It's not that kind of sport. So it's not, but it's also not like tennis or golf where you have to be quiet. So you want them to be cheer them on, encouraging, but you don't want them yelling out orders or direction. So we'll talk a little bit about like setting that tone with your parents to make sure that they're because some of these parents will be in their faces telling them what to do, yelling at them. And so you have to kind of navigate that. But and then you can see like there's a separate skills area that that's where you're gonna when you see another field somewhere with a line, it's probably the skills field. And that's where they're gonna do those 3 attempts for programming, 3 attempts for driving. Judging area, they usually have like a separate room for judges. The judges will usually come and find your kids. They usually have a list and they know who they're looking for to interview. If it's a bad time, they know, judges are trained to know like this, they might be like getting ready to do a match. Then you just nicely tell them like, we're about to go do a match. Can we do our interview after? And they'll like, it's fine. Like kids don't have to stop what they're doing to interview. The judges completely understand that they have other things they're trying to get accomplished throughout the day. So it's very lenient and flexible throughout the day. Just know there might be a couple of adults that stop and want to talk to your kids. That's what they're doing. They want to interview them. And you need to remove yourself from that situation. So you should not be in the background telling them what to do, motioning things to them. You need to make yourself disappear during that time and let them have their interview and then just check in with them afterwards. How did it go? How did you feel? Did you feel like you answered your questions? Things like that, but you should not be coaching them throughout the interview process.
Are the fields elevated or are they on the floor?
It just depends on the event partner and what they choose to do. I would say most of them for a local event are on the floor. Some event partners have invested in platforms or they have them available through school. And if they have the option, I would say any event partner that has the option to affordably, is that a word? Affordably elevate their fields are going to. But if they don't have the option, they're going to be on the field, on the floor. And I would say majority of them are probably going to be on the floor. Here's an example of a competition agenda. They usually give a pretty big span in the morning to have time for check-in, practice, just to get yourself situated, all of that. That gives them time to get the schedules printed and figured out and all of that. There's usually an opening ceremony and a driver's meeting. So that's what I referenced. Like they're going to give you all the information you need to know in that driver's meeting. So I would urge your kids, like listen carefully to this driver's meeting so that we know what to expect moving forward in the rest of the day. Everything should be standardized as far as the rules and the competition and all of that, but every event partner is going to be a little bit different in how they run their events. I will say it's not perfect. We're working really hard at trying to make it more standardized so that you have, your similar experience every time. But like referees are trained online. There's, and everyone interprets things a little bit differently. The game manual there's a lot to go over. And so I think just have some grace and just expect that it's not going to be identical every single time you go to a competition, but you should see similarities amongst all of them, as far as how the rules are enforced and all of that. And then there's usually a lunch. A lot of them will have lunch, like a concession stand open. That by purchasing that, you are supporting their program. All that money is going back into their program. Some of them they'll have pizza pre-orders that you can order pizza ahead of time. So, and then it's delivered to your pit or you come pick it up when it's time for lunch. If you go out and eat, there's nothing wrong with that. Just so you know, like if you're eating there, you're supporting that program. And for a lot of, that's where I made most of my money for my program was in concessions at an event. Like some people bring in food trucks, snow cones, get creative with it because you can make a lot of money with it. And then you continue teamwork matches, team interviews. Usually the skills is still open. And then what happens at the very end, you have the teamwork finals. So they'll tell you in the driver's meeting how many teams are going to go to the finals. So if it's a bigger competition, you might have 16 teams that are going to the finals out of 40 to 60 teams. If it's a smaller one, it might be 10 to 12 teams that are going to the finals. So you have your general matches, then the ones that are in the top, they go on to the finals, the others are now out of it, like we encourage them to stay and watch the finals, but some will leave. It's good to stay and watch the finals, because you might have qualified for an award that was not based on performance. So we do encourage teams to stay for the entirety of the event. And then in the finals, it's basically highest score beats out the lower score. So everything else is erased. Their scores throughout the day are erased. They start from scratch. The first two teams go, that's score to beat, then the next two go. If they beat that, then now they're the high score, the other ones are out. And it just keeps doing that until we have a winner for the competition. So that's how that works. Wow, you guys, we have a lot to go over, and I thought we were gonna be out of here early. This is what a match schedule looks like. To get it all to fit on one page. Generally you'd have more time in between matches, but to get it all to fit on one screen, we made it shorter, but basically when you get the match schedule, if your team is 2-2-2-2D, then I would usually get this job to a student. I would say, here's our match schedule, here's a highlighter, highlight all of our matches. And then that person would be in charge of making sure our team is where they need to be at the right time. Or if you have a lot of teams, I would call it like a pit parent, and I have a parent in charge of this sometimes if I didn't have enough students to do it. And then they would basically make sure the teams are always in place. So they would be like, okay, you guys, you're on field 3 at 9:02, which is match 3. We always say follow the match number before the time, because sometimes the event is running behind schedule or ahead of schedule. So if you're following the match schedule, then you're sure to be in line. So it's a queuing line is what they call it. So think about baseball, like you're on deck, you're in the hole. You never want to have to wait on a team. So it's always like, you got to be in line ready to go. Otherwise the whole competition can get behind schedule. So you get the swing of it as far as like when we need to be in the queuing line. You'll hear announcements like usually on the microphone, we're looking for team 2-2-2-2D, and then you don't want to be, you don't want to be called out like that. So you just want to make sure you're in line and ready to go. It's no big deal if you are called out, but I don't know why there's somebody in here, but we'll just let them in. And then it will show the other team. So that's how you know who your alliance partner is. That's when you can go into the pit area to find that team, to talk to them if you have time, to strategize and all of that. And then you'll see how much time, generally I'd say there's 20 to 30 minutes between each match. So that gives you time to run skills, do an interview, eat some snacks, make some adjustments to your robot, things like that. And I should back up just a little bit. When you get to a competition, you have to get your robot inspected to make sure it fits all the requirements, all the constraints. And we're going to go over that here in a second too, so you can see what the constraints are. But you have to get your robot inspected. It has to pass inspection in order to compete. So what will happen is if they're not passing inspection, the inspectors will say, go back to your pit, see if you can fix this and then bring it back. Because they want you to compete. They don't want you to be disqualified. They want you to compete. So they're going to help you make whatever adjustments. But the goal is to go to a competition ready to compete. And the way we do that is we give them all those constraints in practice. So they follow all of that. So they're not, because that is a stressful moment to go to a competition and then not pass inspection. So we do whatever we can to make sure they're not going to fail. I don't think I'm going to go through the shared score. So the alliance has a shared score. So if these two teams that don't know each other together they score 100 points, they both have 100 points now. So it's not, they don't split it. It's not like you get 50, I get 50. They have 100 points that carry with them throughout the day. Match 2, they're paired with a completely different team. Let's say they get 75 points together. Now that team 1 has 175 points, where the other team, they might have 75, maybe their first match was 0. So it's accumulating throughout the day. And the 2 lowest scores will drop off. So that's always a great thing to know when they're discouraged, when they have a really bad match and they're crying. That I always had that in my back pocket. Hey, remember the lowest 2 scores are going to disappear. So that one is going to go away. No big deal. It's going to be fine. Let's keep going. So it's good to have that in your back pocket. The lowest 2 scores will always drop off. The competition changes every single year. It used to be a 4x6 field. Now it's a 6x8 field. This year's game, this is a brand new challenge that I think is different than we've had a similar basketball challenge in the past, what's funny is these balls look like soccer balls. I don't know why they made them look like soccer balls, but it's more of a basketball situation, but this is a very, very different challenge than what we've ever seen before. So I'm gonna be very transparent with you and say I'm still learning this. And what I will end up doing like the ref certification so that I can know it inside and out. That just helps me throughout the season to support all of you. But at this point, I'm still wrapping my head around it. So we're gonna very base level learn it together. Because it's very new. And the game design challenge committee said at Worlds, they're like, we just threw everything into this. Like such randomness, like all the things that maybe didn't make it into other previous challenges are like, oh, let's add that. Well, yeah, let's do that. So it feels very kind of haphazard to me. It doesn't feel very structured to me. It's very basic. Like we've had some crazy, as you saw on the last slide, some pretty crazy challenges in the past. So I guess the simplicity of it is nice. But this is called Rapid Relay. We're gonna watch the video because I think this is the easiest way to get an overview of it, and then we'll break it down a little bit.
Welcome to the 2024
This is all the sound I have. I'm really
VEX IQ Robotics Competition, and this year's game, Rapid Relay. Rapid Relay is played on a 6-foot by 8-foot field with a wall and pickup zone on one side and a load zone on the other. The wall has 4 targets. Each target has 1 switch in its center. The game objects are plush balls, roughly 150 millimeters or just under 6 inches in diameter. 2 of the balls begin the match as preloads, 1 per robot. A third stays outside of the field for now. We'll come back to that later. Rapid Relay is a game of quick thinking and continuous cycling. Robots take balls across the field and score goals by launching them through the targets in the wall. Each goal is worth 1 point. The first time a ball passes through a target, it will clear the switch. Each cleared switch is worth 1 additional point. After being scored, the ball will land in the pickup zone. Once it touches down, it can be retrieved by a human drive team member who's called the loader. Now, Rapid Relay can have up to 2 balls in play at any one time. So while a scored ball is being picked up, it's time for another human loader to introduce the 3rd ball by dropping it into the loading station. The loading station will then randomly send the ball to one side of the load zone. Once the ball touches the floor, it can be retrieved by a robot, and a new cycle begins. As robots make their way across the field, the Alliance can also receive points for passing the ball to their Alliance partner before it's used to score a goal. If 1 switch is cleared at the end of the match, then each pass is worth 4 points. 2 switches, 8 points. 3 switches gets you 10 points per pass. And if an Alliance clears all 4 switches, then each pass that they made during that match is worth 12 points. Pass, score, pick up, load. Remember how we said it's a game of quick thinking? The last 15 seconds of the match is called the rapid load period. During this time, loaders can introduce the balls directly into any legal robot starting zone. However, balls that are loaded through these zones are not eligible for passes, so teams will have to figure out what strategy works best for each match. Oh, and one more thing. In Rapid Relay, the only robot size restriction is that they must begin the match fully contained in one of the 2 starting zones. This year, the starting zones are 23 inches wide by 6 feet long. There are 3 ways to play in the VEX IQ Robotics competition. First, 2 teams will collaborate in 60-second teamwork
That
challenge.
is just gonna explain what I've already explained to you about the Alliance partners and all that. It also explains the skills. You're gonna watch that video many more times, and then you're gonna show it to your kids, and they're gonna watch it a lot of times. Because that's gonna help them. But as you can see, it is very different than anything we've seen. I need to get out of that. Okay. Also the game manual is linked above. I don't have time to click into it, but I would give your students the assignment of like top to bottom. We're going to go through this, make sure we understand all of it. As Andy mentioned, there is a like version log, like they have scheduled times that they're going to revise it, because what happens is kids start actually, you can design the game all day long, but you don't know until kids start doing it, what's going to happen. And I can give you so many examples of that in the past that they've had to be like, oh, we didn't anticipate that. We didn't think kids were going to do that. They think outside the box all the time. And so what ends up happening is they have scheduled times that they will adjust the game manual based on how kids are reacting to the challenge. So they have some of those that are scheduled, but then they will also, sometimes if it's like needed, like a couple years ago, we had the balls that were going into this goal, and nothing in the game manual said that they could limit how many they had. So these robots would lift like all of them and then dump them, and then the whole game would be over. And so they're like, okay, that's not gonna work. So we're gonna have to adjust that a little bit and limit how many of those balls you can actually have in your possession as you're climbing up that. So things like that, they have to adjust along the way. So you'll see those. And that's why it's important to always have kids monitoring the game manual to make sure they're always up to date. So the last thing you want to do is go to a competition and realize you're breaking a rule that you didn't even know existed. So you want to keep current on the game manual. The driver station, so that would be where the humans are, where the kids are. They have to stay mostly in that area. Now we'll talk about this for the first time ever. There's a third person that can actually match load, where they're putting the balls into the game. So that person can move around the field, but the ones that are driving the robot have to stay in the driver's station. Now the robots themselves, they can go, you have 4 options. So you can go here, 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 or here. So again, if you're a alliance partner, they have to decide right away, where are the robots going? Where are we putting them? And they'll figure out what is the greatest advantage to where the robot should start the game. And it can be opposite, they can be on the same side. It doesn't matter as long as the backside of the robot, or I guess front, as long as a portion of the robot is touching the wall within any of those starting positions. Here's an overview of the scoring. We'll break it down because I think it's a little overwhelming to look at it in this way. But this is straight from the game manual, so you have access to all of this. But basically what happens is the match is going to begin with 2 preloads in the robot. So each robot can start with the ball in the robot. Then they're going to get 1 point for every goal that is scored. So, and also the switch that is cleared. So that blue switch, the ball pushes it through. Once it's cleared, that's 1 point, plus a point for the ball going into that goal. Don't fail me now. Then the balls that are scored can be retrieved by a third team member. So once they go in there, they're going to go back. There's a yellow bar right there. That third team member can then take that ball and take it over and put it into the match load station. You saw in the video that you don't know which way it's going to go. It could go either direction, but that person can then keep bringing that ball back and putting it back in that match load. But only 2 balls can be on the field at one time. So they have to monitor that as well. Come on. Okay, so then points are scored by passing the ball to other robots. So they can score by clearing the switches, by scoring the ball, which is basically the same thing. But then after the switch is cleared, then you're only scoring the ball. And then also by passing the ball to their team, which I think is mind blowing. Like I know it's gonna happen. They're gonna do it, but it just blows my mind. They're gonna get a point for every time they're passing it. So this is for the first time ever scoring is gonna be live scoring. In the past, you'd finish scoring, you'd finish the game, then the ref would walk around and be like, okay, I see you got this, you got this, you got this. This is the very first time ever that the referee is gonna have to score in the process of the game happening. Which I can only imagine how many issues that's going to bring up, because it's going to come down to what the ref saw happen, and that kids are not going to like that, because kids like to debate and fight. So that's going to be interesting. If they pass it and then they don't catch it, no, they not with their hands. They can pick it back up a bit. Pick up, yes. No, as far as not that I've seen so far. And then at the end of the match, an alliance cannot receive points for more passes than goals. So at the very end, that last 15 seconds, they can just shoot as many as they want, but they can't exceed. They can't have more passes than goals. So they can't pass it more than what they score it. So you don't get bonus points for just passing it back and forth. But, because I can see why you right away the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, well, then just pass it back and forth a bunch.
Yeah.
Because once those switches are cleared, the more switches you have cleared, the more points you get. So once you have all 4 switches cleared, I'm like, oh, just pass it back and forth, but you can't have more passes than you do scores, so. They are obviously anticipated that. And then they can load them directly into, they can put the ball on the side, the student can, and then the robot can come pick it up and shoot it in that last 15 seconds. So that's the only time that the ball can come in there and not through the match load area. Clear as mud? Great. I'm not gonna go over scoring examples for the sake of time because, oh my gosh, what happened? So fast. The part rules, this is gonna be in your game manual also. 1 brain, 6 motors is the max. It must represent the team's skill level. So like if an elementary team walks up with this massive intricate robot, the judges are going to be asking lots of questions. When I was at the World Championship, I witnessed a team from another country get escorted down to the basement. They do like a programming test and they ask them a ton of questions. Just, I'd heard about it, but I'd never witnessed it. It was the first time I'd witnessed it. I'm like, this is for real. Like making sure that they are the ones that created it and not the adults. Because otherwise they were going into the finals of the World Championship and they don't want to send anyone to the finals that did not do the work. And so they would disqualify them right there before they get to the dome and do the final, get that championship. So it's definitely a thing. VEX parts only, updated firmware, all that is in the inspection sheet. So there is in the game manual, you'll see the inspection sheet. And then for the first time ever, the robot can extend 6 feet horizontally, which is insane. So that's going to be really interesting, but it has to fit within 23 inches wide, but it can go 6 feet. This is, I'm going to recommend in your, this says full volume, which is last year's challenge. So don't be fooled. Don't be scared. This has not been updated yet, but for your first few practices, I highly recommend utilizing this. I wish they would have had this when I was coaching. This is on the VEX website. I just clicked on the link from the presentation, but it is 4 lessons that introduce the hero bot, driving the hero bot, coding the hero bot, and then using sensors on the hero bot. So it is step-by-step. There are videos, tutorials that you can use with your kids. So you don't have to have it all figured out. They have it mapped out for you on here, introduce this to your team and get them started kind of thing. This is last year's challenge, but the same link should work when they do update to this year's challenge. So I just want you to know those are there for you and I highly recommend using them to make it easier for you. There's the link, but then also there's the directions on how to access it from the website. Sign up for competitions as soon as possible. There is a video link right here on how to sign up for a competition. You'll go to robotevents.com. You guys most of you have already been there to register your teams. Competitions are right here. You're going to choose which one you are, which would be VEX IQ, and then you're going to filter it by location or elementary or middle school. And then that's going to show you all the possible events. You can click on those events to get more information. They'll usually have like the agenda posted, how many teams, things like that. So you can choose the best competition. And we'll, like I said, this will be sent to you afterwards as well. There's so much we didn't get to cover, Andy. Here is the REC website, the VEX IQ. You can use the VEX IQ forum, the Facebook Coaches Corner. Our website has so many good things that I want you to see. Robot resources, you have robot season resources is going to be everything related to this year's challenge, with programming, building, game strategy, tips for your notebook, tips on fundraising, all of that is there on our website for you. Lean on other schools. You have some additional links. If you want to do an official like IQ coaches training, there are some YouTube links there. The educator certification, if that interests you, if you guys like badges and things like that. The STEM labs where I showed you those 4 lessons are right there. We have a Purdue coding help hotline that we'll tell you more about. You'll see information come through your email about that. It works the same way as the Ball State mock interviews, but it's coding support. So if they have problems, and we're going to add in a building component this year as well. So if they have questions about their robot and like something that you just cannot seem to navigate, set up a time with Purdue, SIGBOT's college team, and they will walk, they're amazing, and they will walk through everything with your team. They won't do it for them, but they will guide them and direct them to help them figure it out on their own. STEM mentors, if you're interested in having a STEM mentor, a volunteer in the classroom or after school, there is Danielle's email right there. I really wanted to get into some of this with you guys, but this is what I personally used when I was coaching. I had tryout requirements to narrow it down so that I didn't have, because I could not take on 100 kids. So I had them, they had to fill out like an application. They had to get a teacher recommendation. I had them give me a really quick video of why they wanted to be on robotics and why they thought they would be a good team member. So I can narrow it down a little bit, because right away, if they weren't willing to do that, it would honestly eliminate some of the ones that weren't serious about it. So I'd start with an initial, like, who's interested, and then I would narrow it down. I was specifically looking for kids who needed robotics, who needed it, like did not connect anywhere else. Obviously thinking about our priority populations, keeping that in mind. Thinking about kids that really needed a space where they could grow, where they could belong. That's where my teacher recommendations would come from. I would go directly to teachers to say, these three came to me from your class. What do you think? Who needs this? Who has nothing else? You know, not the kid who was involved in every other thing, but who really needs this? So keep that in mind when you're selecting your students. And then once they were all selected, I had team requirements and I had a student contract. That's where I made sure they didn't have to have perfect grades, but they had to have decent, like they had to just be completing their work, behavior, things like that. The beginning of the year presentation is what I would use with my students at the very beginning to kind of kick everything off. You're welcome to make copies of any of that, use it. I had a parent presentation, so I always had a meeting with my parents to show them the game, to help them understand what the game was so that they could wrap their head around what their kid was participating in, because they all think they're doing BattleBots. They will all think that. So you explain it to them. You do a very miniature version of all the things I just told you, studying that tone and that culture for, we are supporting students, we are lifting them up, it's not all about trophies, it's not all about competition. You can't at a competition scream out to your kids, telling them what to do. Like you have to tell them those things because they're used to going to all the sporting events. So there's a parent presentation. I would also use that opportunity to see who of my parents work for a company that might want to support my robotics team. Because a lot of them, once their kid is in it, they're like, oh, my company wants to support this. They want their logo on the back of your t-shirt. And then that would help bring in money as well. And you can say, I'm filling your pipeline. These are your future employees, so invest in them now. And then there's a sample sponsor request letter there as well that I would send out to different companies in my area to say, here's my local robotics team, will you give us money? And that would help you buy the additional equipment, go to competitions, all of that. Ooh. Okay, next steps, you're going to start recruiting your students for your team, for your grant. If you're a grant recipient, you're going to have those students complete that student pre-survey as well as a teacher survey. You're going to register your team in robot events. If you haven't yet, there's a tutorial there. You're going to do that background check if you haven't done that yet. You're going to register for a competition as soon as possible. You're going to include our logo. There's a link for the logo. We're going to follow up with an email to you that has this presentation, the links to the surveys, as well as a PGP certificate. So you can, if you need that, we'll add some extra hours to it because I know you guys put in a lot of time that does not get noticed. There's my email and Andy's email. What else? Ooh, yeah. Yep.
If they know it, if the parents know it, if they've been taking the code into that order.
Right.
You know,
A summer camp,
and
yeah.
they're not chosen. How detailed should or should you not be in your response?
I think the very first thing you do is touch base with your administrator. And you need to tell your administrator your reasons for not choosing that student. I've been in this exact scenario. And I got chewed out by the parents. And I had to give them my reasons why I did not choose the student. And then you have that, if that administrator is not willing to back you, then you have to try to figure out like, okay, what is my good? Without their backing, there's not a lot you can do. Because the administrator, someone has to back you up to say, this is what the teacher is choosing and I support it and you're just gonna have to deal with it. But if that administrator is not gonna back you up, then unfortunately you have to make a decision, like.
So the other.
I think that's important. I think that especially if you anticipate that problem. Thankfully, my administrator did back me. And it was an very uncomfortable meeting, but he and I and the family met together. And I very respectfully explained why I did not select him for the team. And they didn't accept my reasons. But thankfully, my administrator was like, it is what it is, we gotta move on, you know, like, yeah, yeah. And I come from a very similar district, but, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
And this will be accessible, also will be accessible.
Yep, it'll live on our website, but we'll also email it to you directly. That robot resource page will live there. What's that? You can use that. Is that what you're asking about? Yeah, and then you can download it, so you can keep it wherever you want it to be. Yep. What else? Anybody who needs to go, please go, like, kept you over 10 minutes. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making this awesome choice for your robotics coach, and make sure that you lean on us when you need us, okay?
Yeah.
And we'll keep you updated on equipment too. Doesn't matter. Oh, wait, was it Cody?
I don't know anything about those, but
Yeah,
the
the
work
thing-
ones that-
Have you just got into this new have their own computer? Or they're like,
They're not allowed to be home or anything.
that's okay. They can, as long as they can do it at school, that's all you need.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's straggling, then I work for it, see what you can do.
But you can say that, you know, like, they're the ones that are gonna do all the work in the computer.
Yeah, but I can't let it the money, you know,
Because they definitely need their own device.
right, it's not, so I was like, I just go buy this random computer, or if they're little, they can have them, they do that. I would need one. So, and, so it's a weird, I don't know what that means. Yeah, I'll ask my principal for, because if it's just a regular one, they don't get assigned.
As much.
All right.
Yeah. No problem. I think I have a meeting.
Volleyball, she's like, she works hard, but she's not gonna do it. You don't teach them.
I'll clean up, no worries.
Well,
Sorry, stop.
I can take stuff down with me. Oh, shoot. I didn't, did you see if there were any other questions?
I
Okay,
was just gonna stop recording.
Because